This afternoon, I'd like to introduce Grant Ziegler and Daniel Nathan. They're going to talk to us about rough diamonds and most of all, how you value, market and sell rough diamonds. And it'll be, I think, an eye-opener for a lot of us to, and in particular, when you see the quality of alluvial diamonds, these special alluvial stones that we produce quite a lot of here in South Africa. Just by way of background, Grant Ziegler, he began his career in the diamond industry as a small-scale alluvial diamond miner. So he's been there and done it in the Northern Cape province. He's actually a farm boy. He grew up on the banks of the Vaal River, north of Kimberley. And then aside from alluvial mining, he's also pursued small kimberlites and tailing retreatment operations. And he collectively now has 28 years in the diamond sector, including working for 12 of those as a specialist in the marketing and sales of rough, including rare and exceptional stones. Daniel Nathan has over 30 years in the diamond industry, and he is a real expert in diamond valuation and marketing. His company, the one we're going to hear about today, is based in Johannesburg and specializes in the trading and polishing of rough diamonds and provides a range of services to the industry, both locally and internationally. So thanks, Grant and Daniel, and over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I guess a lot of, I would say the majority of mines in the country as well as the world might be very good at mining diamonds, but are not so good at marketing them. So there's a few sort of what we call tender houses in South Africa, but they're actually marketing companies where they sort of assist the mines to sell their production. In doing that, the diamonds are obviously in a very safe environment. There's a cleaning process they go through. We also know what the market wants and how they should be presented to the buyers. So we clean them and we parcel them, and we give a value which is more of an opinion, really, because at the end of the day, we invite, obviously in South Africa, only licensed buyers to come and view the goods. And during a sort of week-long auction, they value what their sort of speciality is, whether it be small diamonds or either very big diamonds, or even some of them buy industrial. So we present them in a way that is conducive to how they want to buy the goods. Most of them are manufacturers from all over the world, and we basically make sure that they are in a safe environment. They bring their own equipment. We put them up in offices, and over a week-long period, they come and view, and they bid on a closed auction. So they don't know what they're bidding on, or I'm sorry, who else is bidding on what. And after a week-long sort of auction, they bid, and highest price on each parcel wins, basically. So I don't know if I've skipped anything, but that's basically what we do.
So as you can see there, so it's a company based in Joburg, and as Daniel has said, the goods are brought in. We're going to go through the slides and basically give you the rundown of how the industry works, and then working with the buyers too.
So we were quite fortunate to be able to have offices at the old American Embassy in Houghton, Johannesburg. Just from a safety point of view, the diamond centers in Johannesburg were originally in Main Street and have now sort of broken up and are in different areas. But we've managed to have our facility at the old American Embassy, which is obviously, probably the most secure building in the country. Just based on sort of the valuation discussion, we obviously, with a bit of experience from seeing so much rough, we have a very sort of a good idea of what diamonds are worth. We see a lot of alluvial rough diamonds in South Africa. So a lot of it's quite generic. So we understand what things are worth. But at the end of the day, the buyers that come and view the diamonds and bid and buy the diamonds is basically how you really gauge what the market price is. We do use the 4 C's, which is also, related to the Rappaport diamond price, which is obviously the color, cut, clarity, and caratage. And based on looking at a diamond using particular equipment, we use that and go back to the Rappaport so that we can understand, based on all those 4 C's, what the price of a diamond is. Certain characteristics in a diamond will decide what discount off that Rappaport price will be. There may be no discount. It all depends. I mean, it depends on those factors. The slide you're seeing now is the control room at the tender house, which is a central control room where we have offices around that control room where we pass the diamonds to the buyers. There's one-way glass, so we are able to watch them, because obviously it is a very high value commodity, and we need to sort of make sure that we get the goods back that we gave them. Not that it happens, it's not often that happens. It doesn't happen anymore, but still we need to be able to watch and make sure that we monitor how the buyers, how many parcels they get, the caratage they get, and make sure obviously we get the same thing back.
As Daniel said earlier, all the buyers that come to the tenders, and to go back, there are a few tender houses in South Africa. There are 3 in Johannesburg. There's 1 in Kimberley. There might be another one. There's the negotiations for another one, and there's 1 in Swaziland. And as you can see there in the next couple of slides, you'll be seeing some of the equipment that these guys bring in. They bring all their own equipment. We simply, from the previous slide, to make sure that it's a clean and comfortable environment they're sitting in, very secure. And as you can see there, they all have to be registered. So they'll either be registered with a company in South Africa, or they will be part of a company that is internationally known. So they will have their companies are affiliated all around the world, Canada, South Africa, even a few countries in Africa too.
So there's obviously a few different origins that diamonds come from. As I'm sure you're all aware of the big hole in Kimberley, which was a kimberlite pipe. Obviously quite complicated to mine, and there's only sort of so many companies in the world that can mine that kind of do that kind of mining, should I say, which is kimberlite, Rio Tinto, De Beers, those sort of companies. And obviously you also get a alluvial type of diamond, which comes out of a old sort of riverbed.
And that you'll probably have heard during the course of the presentations over the past couple of days.
Yeah, you could probably educate us a bit more about that. But so, I mean, based on the 2 pictures you're seeing now, there's the kimberlite diamonds. The picture that you see on the top there is what we've sort of recognized is in the Harry Oppenheimer building in Kimberley. You can see it's the view over the left-hand side there. So that's probably on the 11th floor. That's a kimberlite production. You can see it's really good, bad, and ugly. You've got 100 carat stone to industrial. So that's what we would call a run-of-mine production. There's everything in it. The bottom picture is more of a, I would say, diamonds that have come through sort of from the Orange River into the ocean, into the sort of Alexander Bay, Port Nolloth area. 99% gem quality. You won't see too much sort of industrial or anything of a sort of weaker purity, and very, very healthy. You can see, I mean, there's just from that picture, there's hardly anything that's not top white in this picture, and obviously decent sizes as well. The kimberlite sort of production will be somewhere can be anything from $10 a carat to sort of $200 a carat because of the industrial percentage in the parcel. Whereas the marine production can be anything from sort of $500 to $2,000 a carat. So you can definitely see the difference in the sort of quality in those productions.
Sorry, just to go back one or two slides. This stone on the right-hand side here. So the question is down the bottom, what is the value that you would have, or that we got for that stone on tender? It was a stone that was sold at the beginning of the year. It originates, as you can see, from the Vaal River, Northwest Province. And I think Tanya, if she will correct me, but you will be able to put it in the box at the end or inbox to see what you...
It's a competition.
It's a competition, yeah.
You need to guess what the value of that diamond is. The winner will not get the diamond, but, you know, perhaps a case of wine, or I don't know what the competition sort of prize is, and maybe a picture of the diamond. We can do for you. But it's a competition just to see if you can guess
Total
what we
dollar.
sold, total dollar amount for this stone. It was a 78 carat. It was intense, fancy yellow, a perfect stone, clean stone. It was a South African diamond, and from the Vaal River, sort of. There's the information on that. So that's the competition that we're running.
Guys,
Okay.
let me interject. Please put your guesses into the chat box before we get to the end of the presentation, and we will select the winner from that. Thanks, guys. Carry on.
Thank you. As Daniel also spoke a little earlier, and we're both going to talk about this, these guys bring in all their own equipment to determine the best value that they are going to get out of that stone. There's a lot that goes into it. As you can see, the machines that I've used.
So on your top left corner is a color machine, which was designed by an Israeli company. The color machine basically just gives you a second opinion. A lot of the diamond dealers will obviously look with using their eyes to see what color they think the rough diamond is. Obviously, in a rough diamond, there's so many different factors that are sort of left to your opinion. You may think it's a particular color, or the diamond will finish a particular purity. But when you're looking at the rough diamond at the marketing house, you need to make that decision. These particular pieces of equipment give you more of an educated guess. So the color machine on the left-hand side, you put the diamond you sort of lift that silver cap, you then put it into the machine, and it'll give you an idea of what the color is based on whatever technology they use. There's two sizes of machines. One takes up to 150 carat. I think it's about $50,000. And the smaller one will take up to probably like a 40-50 carat, and that machine's $35,000. And the company can't make enough of them. Basically the whole diamond industry worldwide uses these color machines. It's only really for rough diamonds. The machine on the right-hand side measures fluorescence. So fluorescence is a natural characteristic in a diamond. The less fluorescence, the more valuable the diamond's worth. The more fluorescence, it's kind of a bit of a weakness in a diamond. It's not really consequential to the sort of man on the street that doesn't really understand diamonds, but it is a characteristic of a diamond. Fluorescence is either very, very strong or nothing at all, and there's sort of obviously shades in between. The bottom machine is a sarin machine, which basically takes a video of the model of the diamond, and then with certain parameters you'll be able to see within that model what recovery or what shape or what size diamond you could polish out of it. It doesn't give you what imperfections are in the stone. You'll have to, with a bit of experience, mark those on the outside of the diamond, and sort of there's quite an art to it. but these are very, every single company that comes to us has at least 3 or 4 or 5 of these machines in order to grade the diamonds.
There'll be, the slides are coming up where you'll actually see the picture that this Sarin produces on the computer that is linked to it. So these guys have programs that they then work with to determine the best polished stone that they can get out of it.
Also, on the slide previous, it did mention certification. The worldwide polish certificate would normally be, the GIA would be used. The Gemological Institute of America is probably the most recognized polished diamond certificate. They also do pearls, gemstones. They are very, very well recognized worldwide. Any rough diamonds that come into South Africa from anywhere else in the world would need a Kimberley process certificate. It just kind of gives you the security that the diamonds, which mine they originate from, and are not sort of obviously promoting blood diamonds. So it is a certificate that has to be produced when it comes into South Africa. A Kimberley process certificate does give sort of the origin of the diamonds and that they are legal, basically. So on the next slide, it gives you, we're giving you a more of a color description of what you're seeing here are polished diamonds, but your top color being a D color is obviously colorless, which an E and F are graded in that category as well. The next grade would be, as you can see, it's the alphabet, as you can see, starting at D. From G, H, I, J, you will start having a slight tint of yellow in it, but also obviously still near colorless. K, L, M starting to get a little bit yellower, and then from an N to a Z, basically you start to get more and more yellow. These yellows are not necessarily the very valuable yellows in the way of intenses or fancy yellows. These are what we call in the industry Cape yellow. So probably, I don't know how many years ago, there was a particular diamond that came from the Cape area that had these shades of yellow, and it's still recognized today. Anything from an O to a Z, you would call a Cape diamond. So if you can see on that slide, that sort of gives you the description of white diamonds, obviously going from D to Z, and the bottom chart shows you colored diamonds. So they're using blue color here, which we don't really see much of. We don't really see too many blue diamonds, but those are basically the shades of fancy colors. So you'll go from faint to very light to light, fancy light. Once you start getting from fancy to fancy intense, fancy vivid, and fancy deep, those are very valuable and what you would actually call an investment diamond. The next slide refers to clarity. So if you look at the chart, you'll see flawless. It's quite self-explanatory. It's flawless is obviously flawless. There are no imperfections whatsoever. And a lot of these imperfections are graded using a microscope, as you can see. The next grade from flawless is a VVS1 and VVS2, which is a very, very slightly included diamond. I mean, you're not going to be able to see it with a 10 times magnification. It's going to be very difficult. You then the next group would be VS1, VS2, which is a very slightly included. You will start to be able to see those with a 10 times magnification. The next group's SR1, SR2, which is slightly included. There's a little bit more in the diamond. And then in the bottom group are quite badly included. They've got a lot more visible imperfections that you probably would be able to see with a naked eye. Like anything, these imperfections, you have good imperfections and bad imperfections. So You might have an imperfection that is a little glitz, a little crack that comes from outside in, but obviously pleasant. It's not something you'll be able to see very easily with any sort of magnification. And sometimes diamonds, polished diamonds, are worth more if they have a very pleasant imperfection, because they start to become more affordable. So that's basically the range of clarity. Right, cut. Cut basically is all the different shapes that you would polish in a diamond. Most popular is a round stone. Pear shapes at the moment, ovals, square emeralds are quite also popular at the moment. Fancy shaped diamonds are much cheaper, probably about 20-30% cheaper than a round diamond, because when you're polishing a round diamond, you lose more recovery out of a rough stone. The bottom picture gives you a description of what some of the facets are called in a polished stone. So as you can see, the top of the stone would be the table. The facets just sort of bottom of the table are crown. The girdle is the area between the top and the bottom of the stone. The culet is the very bottom, the pointed part of the diamond. And the pavilion are the facets that are on the bottom of the bottom of the stone. So there's a description of the top and side and bottom of the diamond, polished diamond. Okay,
so basically what we do is once the goods have come in, I just want to check. Once the goods have been brought in from the different mines, we go through a whole sorting process. I mean, basically from a small producer who's giving me 200 carats to a slightly bigger producer who's giving me 5,000 carats. The process is still the same. You want to get the maximum out of the goods, and you want to be able to give a presentation or for the buyer to be able to select what he wants to buy. Because at the end of the day, different buyers have different ideas of what they want to buy. You'll get some buyers who only buy 10 characters and plus. So all those single stones will be parceled accordingly. You'll have some buyers who only buy melee. Melee for us is a 65 pointer and down. So there's no point in taking 1,000 65 pointers and putting them in individual parcels. You're going to put them all together. And so it's basically just keeping track of each individual mine's production. We have quite a few. We have on our books at the moment, we probably have around about 30 producers. As I said earlier, ranging from a guy who mines all on his own, might even be a farmer, and on the sideline he's doing a bit of mining on his farm. He has the correct paperwork, and he brings me 50 carats or 100 carats, and then up to a proper alluvial miner who that's all he does. He has invested all his money. He might even have a few partners from around the world, in fact, who have invested in him, and he will then mine even all over South Africa. So the goods will come to us. We'll clean them, we'll sort them, and it's basically a complete paper trail of each parcel.
They're normally packaged into sizes.
Yeah.
So you'll have any stone from a 3 carat up will be individually on its own, and anything lower than that will then be parceled in sizes. Obviously, we can't mix everybody's diamonds together, but we know that a parcel of 2 carats belong to a particular miner. The buyers do not know that. They have no idea who any of the goods belong to. It just has a parcel number, an amount of stones, and a caratage. They then obviously go online, they'll choose that parcel, whatever number it is, and they'll bid their highest price that they want to pay for that parcel. So you might have 30, 40 bids on one particular parcel, and the buyers can be very, very close to each other. Some buyers have won a parcel or lost a parcel by $1 because they don't know what everybody else is bidding. They're bidding on a blind, closed system.
We run the tender from basically the last 2 weeks of the month. This gives the mines the opportunity to mine throughout the month, be able to get us their production, goes onto the market, and we run it from the Tuesday for 7 days basically. And it runs, all tenders generally run, like I said earlier, in South Africa, generally run towards the end of the month. The ones being in Kimberley, the ones here in Johannesburg, because these guys fly in and they'll come to all the tender houses.
The diamond tender house, the marketing house, we have no ownership over the diamonds. We're purely a brokerage business. We make sure that the diamonds are presented correctly, cleaned correctly. We make sure we invite the correct people with the correct credentials and with the correct financial ability to purchase millions and millions of dollars in diamonds. We have no real involvement. Once the diamonds go on the sale, we obviously have no involvement in what the price it sells for. We do make a reserve price or a valuation. This sort of gives us an idea of what the value of the whole sale is worth, but it's really just an opinion. It's of no consequence to the results of the sale. The buyers do not know what that reserve price is. That information is not given to them. You don't want to influence anybody to pay anything or do anything. So it's really their decision what the diamonds are worth. And they are the market price because they are the ones that are buying the diamonds. So like I discussed before, the Rappaport price, we use this, or should I say the buyers use this to decide on what price to offer on a diamond. Once they've decided the shape of the diamond, the color of the diamond, the cut, the clarity, they'll then go back to this Rappaport price and decide based on this price what the diamond is worth, either to them or their customer, or whatever factors there are that go into valuing the diamond. This price list, as you see now, you'd have to add 2 zeros onto the prices that you see. The Rappaport price and the price of a diamond is exponential. So you'll have certain sizes will have certain prices. The minute you go to the next category, it'll increase in price. So a 99 pointer and a 1 carat are completely different prices. It's almost a 50-60% difference, because once you've gone to the next category, the price then changes. Obviously, a diamond with a much higher color and a much higher purity has a much higher value, and a stone that is a much lower color and a much lower purity would be lesser value. So like at the moment in the world, people that are sort of getting married and can only afford a certain thing would more look for a stone that's sort of middle of the range color, middle of the range purity, something affordable. I know De Beers had a for the longest time their pitch for their business was advertising that you should save up 3 months' salary for a diamond, which is not so easy at the moment. But I guess you just need to try buy a diamond that you can obviously afford, and something that has the correct value. I mean, obviously retail is a different discussion, but this is what you're seeing now on your screen is how the diamond buyers and how we value a rough diamond using all those parameters of the 4 C's with this price list, how we grade a diamond or value a diamond, should I say. So we use a online bidding system, which is obviously the service housed in a particular part of the world. And the buyers obviously log into our website. They have username and passwords. They'll go through, once the tender goes live, they'll go onto the list and they will bid on whatever they want to bid on. Some people, like Grant said, only buy small diamonds. Some people only buy big diamonds. Some people only buy yellow diamonds. Some people, obviously, most of them are manufacturers. So 99% of what they're buying will be manufactured into a polished diamond at some point, whether it's bought here shipped overseas, sold in the rough to another company. It's all just whatever we're selling is being traded by all of them, whatever they're doing with it. That's obviously not our business, but we have a online system where the guys can bid anywhere from the world. You might have a guy that's come to look at the goods on Monday. He's already flown back to Belgium and will bid on Sunday afternoon. So he may go back to his office and decide what to price. Most of all, having really the argument with himself about what to bid. And on a week later at a particular time, 5 o'clock South African time, all the bids need to be into the system, and the system closes at that time. It's not really something we're in control of. That's just the way the system works. And once it's closed, it's closed. The highest price on each parcel will be the winner of that parcel. We still need to obviously ask the seller, the mining company, if they're prepared to accept that price. They may accept it, they may not accept it. If they don't accept it, obviously that stone will be withdrawn from the sale.
So this is a result sheet, as Daniel's just spoken about now. This result sheet will be sent to the mining company, as you can see the name above there, and gives that mining company all the information he needs to decide whether he wants to sell or not. And as you can see pretty on the left-hand side, obviously the parcels, as we've broken it up, gives the description. And as we said earlier, and as Daniel also said earlier, this information is only between the tender house and the mining company. This information we discuss the information between us on how they want to sell, what they want to sell. What he also spoke, as you can see, the way it's broken up into the different parcels. Your single stones, 8 to 10 grainers, 10 grainers, and so it goes all the way down. And as I said earlier, melee, the quantity is the amount of stones, obviously single being 1 stone, 8 to 10 grainers, 3 stones, and so it goes to the bottom. The total weight of the parcel that they brought to us, so this was quite a small parcel. And then the reserve prices, as Daniel said earlier too. This is our opinion. This is not what
it's not an offer.
It's not an offer.
It's not an offer. It's our opinion of what we think these diamonds are worth. And it also helps us with our information. So if we think that a stone in a 3 carat 99 is worth $1,000 a carat, which we graded it as, that was our opinion. The fact that it sold for, or it was offered $1,200 a carat, it just means that someone has seen something different to us, or they have a particular order for that stone. Out of a 399, you should get a 1.5 carat plus in a polished stone. And obviously this price that he's offered all relates back to the color, the clarity, the size, and the shape that he was looking to buy. So you can see that that's the highest price. You'll then see what came second on that parcel, and third. And I mean, we could obviously give 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, but it's not really irrelevant. But this just gives the producer a good idea of what the diamond got offered and what the 2nd and 3rd was. Is there a huge difference between 1st and 2nd? And, you know, how did everybody value it? Were all of them pretty similar? And you can, if you have a look at this, it'll give you a good idea of how people bid and how close they are to each other. The winner there might be a difference between 1st and 2nd because he's, I don't know, seen something the other guy hasn't seen. But you'll also see a column which shows us the price per carat. And at the bottom, we will give the mine their total highest bid, as well as what their average per carat was. This parcel is an alluvial production from sort of the Wolmeranstad, Schwarzenegger area. And this is how we don't give the buyers names, the who won the parcel, because obviously that's also, you know, confidential to them. And this shows you when we give a result to a mining company, this is the information they've got. They can decide whether they want to withdraw a particular stone. If they think that a stone was worth more and they would rather keep it. As you can see, like on the parcel 160, we valued it at 2,100. They got offered 2,300, so that's more. Sorry, let's go to the single here, the 4 carat. We valued it at 7, they got offered 6. They might say, well, you know, we thought it was worth 7, we're going to withdraw it, which is, it's up to them. I mean, it's at this point in time with the price of rough diamonds and the amount of people that we've got coming to see and their expertise. These people are experts. It's not recommended that you withdraw anything, because obviously the price next month could be different with all that's happening in the world.
The advice that we would also give to this producer is that look at the bigger picture. Your total reserve was $33,000. That was our opinion. You got 39. If you're going to withdraw 1 stone, has it changed anything? I mean, yes, you're going to withdraw it. You're going to still going to get your reserve. But in the bigger picture is that you've sold this production. It's way more than your reserve, and the deal is done. So it's for them to decide.
Absolutely. Cutting and polishing. We do have a cutting and polishing facility at the tender house, which does offer the buyers an opportunity that if there is something that they want to manufacture locally, because a lot of the diamonds get exported to factories around the world. So just on the basis of trying to promote the South African industry and polishing diamonds in South Africa, all rough diamonds do hold a 5% export levy. So it does kind of try and convince people to polish goods locally, but we can only sort of polish a certain size. We can't polish the very, very small diamonds. So we have a factory at the facility that does give the buyers an opportunity to polish something they've bought at the tender in the facility at Knox. And here you can see sort of what goes into manufacturing. So your top picture, just to show you what we're showing you here is a technology also that's available where you can almost get a diamond x-rayed by a company. It's called the Galaxy. So what they do is they make a sort of x-ray of the diamond, and then the imperfections are plotted in that rough diamond. They charge a particular price per carat. The information is then sent to you in a file, and then you're able to sort of plan the best recovery diamond out of that rough diamond. Just remember that this can only happen.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. Before you move on to the next slide, just stop, let me know, and we can check all the bids in the chat box.
Okay, cool. So what you see here is this technology that people are using to see what comes out, the best maximum can come out of a diamond. This can only be done after you've bought the diamond. It's not available before we put the goods on the sale. So there is still obviously that matter of opinion when you come and look at the diamonds at the tender. But this is a technology that we use after a diamond has been bought, especially just to maximize what's going to come out of the diamond. If an imperfection is in a stone, you can how to eliminate it so that you can get a clean stone. But this particular technology is only really when you've decided that you're going to polish a diamond.
So if we go to the chat box, I'll just read out the bids for you, and you can see the extreme variation we have here too. Start off with 2.5 million US, 140,000 US, 2.550, or 2.5 million, 195,000, 14.5 million.
Are these all dollars?
Yes.
Total dollars.
4.5 million, 8.26 million, 900,000, 12 million, 1.2 million, 2 million, 100,000, 17 million, 900,000, 7.5 million, 90,000, 25,000, 1.5 million, and 7.2 million. Those are the guesses so far.
Okay.
Okay, there were two that were pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay, all yours.
Do we go to the next one?
They're gonna have to split the case of one. Okay, so there's your answer. The stone sold for on the auction. It sold for $1.1 million. It was approximately $14,000 a carat in the rough. As far as I know, the stone polished out a 41 or 42 carat radiant cut diamond in an intense fancy yellow. I don't know where it is now, but I did sort of get some information about what the result was. And at the same time, the other picture that you see on your right, you could have a diamond that's much smaller, but it has a intense pink color in it that can be worth the same value. So, you know, it's very difficult to compare apples with apples in this instance. Some diamonds have very valuable characteristics, even though they're very small. So, yeah, I mean, it's really quite a broad spectrum of how valuable a diamond is. It might be very, very big, but it can be worth nothing. So it's quite difficult to compare two particular diamonds. And that's it. That's diamond marketing, the gist of it.
Thanks, guys. It was most interesting. Well done, Grant and Daniel. It looks like we might have to stretch the budget and award 2 boxes of wine or a box of wine and a box of
obviously
beer.
one closer than the other, but anyway, it was
1.2,
1.2 and 1.5. I think.
Yeah, and 900.
Oh, was there 900 as well?
900 too, yeah.
No, there were 2 900s, I think,
Okay.
that I've got on my list. Okay, do you want to unshare?
Wasn't the 1.2 closer than the 900?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, well, we'll give a second prize then as well. Okay, do you want to check the figures in the chat box, Tanya?
Yeah, I have done so, and the closest is Lymphoclobella at 1.2.
Okay, let's open it up to discussion. Do you guys want to stop sharing? Okay, questions, comments?
Yeah, Grant, it's Herman Grutter here. Just a quick question. If somebody wants provenance information, if a buyer wants provenance information, particularly for larger stones, is there a mechanism to disclose that?
Yeah, yes, we can. We can. It obviously all depends on the. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I mean, if a buyer needs to know where it's from, or the GIA actually have a service where they can put on one of the certificates that the diamond is SA origin.
Yeah.
We can let the GIA know that we know where the diamond's from, which area, and we, on our invoice, we will put there the origin of it. Obviously can't say exactly who it came from, or I can't put his name, but I can say the diamond is Northern Cape, or it's from Kimberley, or so. Yes, I am actually able to do that.
Because what you must also remember, as he said earlier, if it's coming from let's call it Africa, there will be a KP certificate. In South Africa, I'm one of the guys who physically goes to those mines, and so I know the origin. Yes, so it will be the area I will be comfortable with. I'll be able to say correct, that's where it could come. It's either Northern Cape or Northwest or wherever, and then pin it down to a closer area.
Just to add to that for Herman, I mean, certainly in our early Rockwell days, we did that as well. I mean, some buyers, particularly on the bigger stones, really were quite emphatic about that, as knowing where they come from. And I think there've been 1 or 2 ventures, and you can correct me, Daniel, on the West Coast. They've never really taken off, where you could sort of go on a trip up the coast and get on a boat and almost go and mine your own diamonds, which you could then take and get cut and polished.
Yeah, there is. I know there is someone that does that, that gives you that kind of experience.
I think one of the Stellenbosch groups have tried
Yes,
it.
correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
never really
They do
taken off.
that. I don't know if they do it anymore. I'm not sure how often they do
No,
it. But
it's
there
never
is
really got,
apparently.
never got critical mass. Yeah.
I did see there's one question there. Is there a standard pricing? It then disappeared. There's a standard pricing if you're going to go with a Rappaport, correct? You can work it out. You've got all your equipment. You've worked out that you've got a 1 carat in the rough, and you're going to get a 1 carat whatever polished out of it. But it also goes on feel. A lot of these guys have been in the industry for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So they go and feel. They know exactly what they want out of that stone. And like earlier we were saying about colors, you get guys who specifically buy yellow stones because he has sold so many in his life. He knows exactly that's an intense, that's a vivid. He knows what he got for it 2-3 years ago. He'll work on pricing. So it all goes around feeling. There's no handbook. There's no fixed structure of selling an diamond.
There's no public Bloomberg or any of these stock market indexes that discuss what a diamond's worth. It's very easy to see what gold is at, or silver, or platinum, or coffee, or oil. But a rough diamond, there's no sort of index to explain what a rough diamond's worth. You're not going to see on CNBC the price of a rough diamond. It doesn't. You'll never see that kind of information. The diamond business uses the Rappaport list, which it only really gives you the price of a diamond when it's complete. It doesn't discuss what it costs to polish it or certify it, or what goes into polishing a diamond. That price that you're seeing on Rappaport is the finished article. It's a shape, it's a color, it's a clarity, it's a size. Whatever happens when someone is dealing or selling these diamonds, that's the price that it's trading for. There's obviously some sort of discount that it's traded at.
And Grant and Daniel, maybe just to also comment. I mean, you know, when you're looking at diamonds, if you're looking at the kimberlite goods, and particularly the smalls, and remember, you know, most of the world's production averages 0.3 of a carat. So if we're looking at these rather rare alluvial stones, you know, it's a whole different market. It's very so those little stones you could consider as a commodity. There is more or less a price, you know, and the buyers and the beers and the Russians will all, you know, what that price is within a couple of % on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis.
Correct.
These alluvial goods that are being produced, particularly from our, you know, Orange River, Northwest Province, West Coast, are really special goods, and a lot of it goes back to exactly that. It's sort of, you know, it's a feel, and a lot of the buyers will actually be buying to feed into a niche market, or in the case of the bigger stones or the colored stones, they will also have you know, specific buyers lined up.
Yeah, we had a customer, one of the sales, that had 60,000 polishers. So for him, it's more expensive for him not to have the product. So the price that he's prepared to pay might be more than someone else, because he's got so many people that he needs to give product to polish for him. If he doesn't have the product, it's just going to be more expensive for him to maintain all those workers. But that's obviously very small diamonds.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, these exceptional, the stones, for example, that Debbie Bowen and John talked about from Car, the stones, the colored stones that come out of the Orange River. I mean, how often do you guys see, you know, really top quality stones, you know, coming across your desk, Daniel? They're extremely rare.
We do see quite a lot of rare diamonds. We see.
Yeah, but you're in the business. Yeah,
yeah, we get on a monthly basis anything from 4,000 to 15,000 carats a month, just depending on what's been produced. A lot of factors is the rain. Load shedding is obviously going to cause a bit of a problem. There's a lot of issues when it comes to mining. So some months will be more than others, but we certainly see a lot of very high value diamonds, very yellow, couple of pinks. We haven't seen too many blues. I must be honest, that's something that's really, really rare. One of the questions I just saw now was something to do with a pink or purple, or so we see very, very seldom see those kind of colors. It's almost impossible to decide on an actual value of them because we don't see them very often. So if you have a purple diamond on your tender, it's literally whatever price someone's prepared to pay for it. There's no
willing buyer, willing seller. Willing buyer.
It's like a Picasso. You don't see them very often, and people are prepared to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for them because of the rarity of them. We don't see a lot of sort of pinks and blues and that sort of thing, but we do see a lot of yellows and very, very good yellows.
Yeah. Okay, we did quite a few questions. The first one, obviously, and it's becoming a big thing, and I think Herman might have a comment, is obviously blockchain. Particularly now with, I guess, the Ukrainian setup and people wanting to know where their diamonds are coming from. There's a big drive on to be able to trace diamonds with blockchain methods. De Beers have done some quite smart work. I think there's still quite a long way to go, but has anyone else got comments on that? Anyone want to contribute?
Sure. Blockchain, for me, the origin of the diamond, yes, there's certain, most of what we receive, we could probably tell you. I mean, we know where the diamonds come from. We know who our suppliers are. We know them all. I mean, we're very careful about who we sell for. I think the blockchain facility would be good for the paying. If all of us had a sort of wallet where we could send them money in 1 second, decentralized, that might be a different discussion. But we certainly know the origin of where our diamonds come from. We know exactly.
Yeah, but if you have, how many sales have you got each year? 10 or 12, 15,000?
11.
So maybe you sell 200,000 carats of top quality goods a year. I mean, you should be able to track all that.
We know where they come from.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
But,
because obviously the supply, the mine has to give us a broker's note or a receipt to say that we're going to do the marketing for them. So we do. We know where everything comes from.
And in fact, we had a very nice stone in the beginning of the year too. It was an exceptional yellow. And obviously when the buyers come through, they view the stone, they want to know that this is the proper thing. So my answer, their question to me would be, is this a South African stone? Where does it come from? My reply is definitely South African. I know exactly where it comes from. The owner, we work very closely together. So trust me, I know where it comes from.
I think the question is, if you walked into Tiffany's in Bond Street in London and you went to go buy a £100,000 diamond, they couldn't tell you where it's from. That's sort of the gist of the question. None of these companies can tell you where that polished diamond comes from. We can tell you where the rough diamond comes from, but none of these sort of high-end jewelry stores or any sort of diamond companies selling polished diamonds can tell you where the diamond comes from. Definitely not.
No, that's work in progress, but it's an interesting one. Hans, you've got a question.
Yes, thank you, John. Regarding the provenance, there is already a company by the name Ocean Diamonds, and they specifically work on a marketing drive where the buyer will know exactly where the stone was specific in this case, marine diamonds, was mined from the ocean floor. They would even go as far as to identify the diver who actually was working with a suction hose at that time. And they might also include a picture of him or his wife and make it something of a personal journey for the end buyer. And thereby it's one individual stone that they trace back to the actual operator at sea. And obviously the added benefit is that it's very low environmental disturbance because of unconsolidated sediments that's just been moved around to extract the diamond comparing to other on-land operations. Thank you.
Yeah, good points. Thanks, Hans. Right, there was a question about purple and blue diamonds. I mean, I think in the the lead-up presentations, how do purple diamonds compared to pink diamonds? Well, purple are just extremely rare, and hence the price exponentiates. Must you be certified to be in a position to price a diamond, or is it experience based? Probably the biggest factor, I think, Daniel and Grant, is experience, but it helps to have the certificates and be able to study a diamond as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too many sort of schools or courses or things to educate people on how to value or buy diamonds. We've been through the school of life. We've bought diamonds, we've made, we've lost, we've learned the hard way. So there's no real certification. Experience is basically your certification. I did do a course right when I started in the diamond business, but I don't think it's available. I don't think you can do it anymore. There were like a whole mix of people that were there that just really wanted to learn what diamonds were about, but it wasn't really sort of, you weren't certified in any way for any reason.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, yes, there are various courses that GIA have and courses.
Correct. The GIA is a very good course to do. That's something worthwhile doing if you want to learn about diamonds, and even if you're looking for a career in diamonds, the GIA course is something that's worth probably having as a certification, definitely.
It gives me pleasure to introduce Tanya Marshall to talk about SAM codes, and I guess this really goes to things like compliance. We've talked about it a little bit. That here and there's been some discussion about raising money or spending shareholders' money to go and mine or explore for new diamond deposits. So Tanya this afternoon is now going to talk about the evaluation of diamond deposits according to the SAMREC codes. Just by way of background, Tanya has a PhD from the University of Witwatersrand in 1990, and she then formed a consulting company in 1996 called Explorations Unlimited. She has a vast amount of experience in this business. She also has experience in other minerals, obviously, but I think her first love and interest has always been diamonds. You've also seen plenty of Tanya during the course, and so without further ado, Tanya, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, John. Right, folks, so over the last 2 weeks, you've had a number of speakers highlighting issues of resource estimation, code compliance. And today we're going to review some of the basics of the evaluation of diamond deposits according to the SAMREC code. Now, since we've got a number of students on board, I'm going to give a brief introduction as to what the codes are and how they developed. So to start with, I'd like it to take you back to the late 1960s, to the heady days of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and the Poseidon nickel bubble. At that time, the Vietnam War was in full swing. The price of nickel was climbing daily as materials were needed to support the war effort. Then in Australia, there was a company called Poseidon, and they struck what looked to be a decent-sized nickel deposit. That was back in 1969. In 1 year, and this was based more on corporate promotion than any real technical data, their shares on the Australian Stock Exchange rose from 80 cents a share to over $280. And that was before they'd even started production. But that was when things started to go pear-shaped. The mining and extraction costs were higher than expected. The grade was much lower than initially thought. And to make matters worse, the Vietnam War ended and the nickel price crashed. So within 5 years of operations, the company imploded, was delisted from the ASX, and its investors lost millions. After the investigation into this, it was noted that if there had been more robust technical reporting procedures, these problems could all have been avoided. And as a result, the JORC code was born in 1989. And this was now a guide to what information was needed for any company reporting on the Australian Stock Exchange. Fast forward then a few years to Indonesia, where a Canadian junior company called Briex identified a gold deposit at Busang in Borneo. Over the next year or so, the geologist, one Michael de Guzman, initiated the most elaborate fraud in the history of mining, worth over $6 billion. Please do yourself a favor and watch one of the many videos or movies about this scam. See how gold was salted and the lengths that he went to try and prevent its discovery. Long story short, in 1997, the fraud was uncovered, the company collapsed, and shareholders lost billions. De Guzman committed suicide, or did he escape to a private island in the Caribbean? Your choice. One of the other directors ran off to the Bahamas, but he soon died of a stroke. The third was the only one to face formal charges, but he was acquitted. This fraud convinced Canadian authorities to regulate reporting practices, and the SIM codes and subsequently the NI 43-101 was created as a set of rules to protect investors from mineral project disclosures. So against this background, South Africa developed the SAM codes. These are the South African Mineral Reporting Codes, basically a set of principles and requirements guiding how public reports on mineral properties need to be written. It shows you what sort of information you need to put into a report if you're writing it for investors or potential investors. These principles and guidelines are primarily applicable for a document written for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, but they also apply pretty much to any document that has the potential to land up in the public domain. The SAM codes are South African specific, but they are similar to the codes that you require for other jurisdictions. And they also fall under the CRISCO umbrella, where CRISCO is the international body that has oversight of all resource and reserve reporting codes. The SAMREC code is one of the 3 codes that make up the SAM codes. It deals with the public reporting of solid minerals, and that obviously covers diamonds. Now, in terms of the SAMREC code, my pointer, in terms of the SAMREC code, in addition to all the generic requirements for all minerals and metals, there are also quite a few diamond-specific issues, which are highlighted in a diamond-specific section. But in addition to that, we have a diamond guideline that deals with requirements in addition to the standard SAMREC code. This guideline also looks at other gemstones, at least in terms of principles and generalities. You are all no doubt familiar with this figure. It's the basis for all reporting classifications, starting off with exploration results, going through the different classes of resources as we increase our level of geoscientific knowledge and confidence, and then we move across to reserves after applying technical studies based on a series of modifying factors. You'll also note that within the diamond-specific area, SAMREC has diamond resources and diamond reserves as opposed to simple mineral resources and reserves. Okay, so we're going to start off with the exploration results, which is pretty much any information that you can generate through doing an exploration program. And we're looking at all sorts of information from survey data, remote sensing, geophysics, sampling, analytical testing, and so on and so forth, as well as the diamond-specific information that we have. Some of the important things about reporting exploration results is that you're not to present these in a way that implies that it's potentially economic. So the use of terms resource, reserve, and mine are pretty much not what you want to use. You must include all relevant data. You don't get to decide at this stage what is important for people to know. Tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly, and allow them to draw the conclusions based on the information that you provide. In addition to the work that you have been doing on the project, you can also include historical data and information, but only if the competent person who's writing the report considers that it is relevant and reliable, and also giving reasons for such conclusions. And here we have the example, the extreme example of you wouldn't use historical information going back to the turn of the century to look at an area either in Kimberley or down along the Middle Orange River. You can also include information from adjacent or nearby properties. Again, if you can demonstrate relevance and justification. Now, in this particular picture here, if this was your project using grades and values from this adjacent property would not be applicable. You'd look at things that had a similar geological setting, similar bedrock conditions, or depositional environment. And also, we're looking for at least some physical evidence of assumed continuity. Because simply because your property might be adjacent to one where there is a dike or a gravel doesn't necessarily provide justification of continuity. Here we have a kimberlite dike, and it's assumed that there is your concession. You can't simply assume that that dike runs through your property, because it might not. The importance of exploration results is that companies often use them to generate exploration targets, which are generally discussed in terms of size and type. And here there's pretty much no difference to any other minerals. SAMREC allows for the discussion of two varieties of exploration targets. The first one is the conceptual target, which is based purely on a desktop study. Such exploration targets need not represent any discovered mineralization. It might simply be a conceptual target. However, the concept must be realistic. For example, you wouldn't generate a kimberlite target in the middle of a subduction zone or a marine deposit in a low wave energy environment, not unless you had some really good reasons, which we would expect you to discuss. The second variety of exploration target is mineralization with a capital M. Now, whereas the conceptual target is based purely on a desktop study, mineralization is where you've identified a specific target based on actual prospecting results. But you might not have enough technical information to declare a resource, or you may not have demonstrated realistic prospects of eventual economic extraction. To repeat, mineralization is a subset of exploration target. It is not a low confidence resource. And the reason why we developed the term mineralization is specifically to allow small operators to discuss their preliminary results in a public forum, to give them a way to describe what it is they're doing, showing their results without trying to shoehorn it into a resource category that it doesn't fit. SAMREC calls this mineralization with a capital M. JORC calls it pre-resource mineralization, and other codes don't differentiate from conceptual targets at all and simply just call everything exploration target. In fact, here we've got an example of how you can look at it. So this is the Catalan kimberlite complex in Brazil, where you have two geophysical anomalies that have actually been drilled. So you at least know that they are kimberlite. So these would be classified as pre-resource mineralization, whereas these targets out here, looking at the geophysics and where it lies, most likely kimberlite, but we can't say for certain because there's no hole in it. So these would be the conceptual targets. It's very useful to use for a company to show its exploration pipeline. Because outside of here, Catalan 1 at the time was a kimberlite in a mineral resource. The company would then be able to show that these two were next in line to be bulk sampled, and these two anomalies here were to be drilled to determine whether they were kimberlites or not. The other thing about exploration targets is that we can use indicator minerals, kimberlitic indicator minerals. Now, once and for all, indicator minerals are not applicable to alluvial or marine deposits. They are used to provide indirect evidence for potential occurrence within primary kimberlites. You can't use them to infer a diamond grade or a value at resource estimation classification, and it has limited implication for project value. So to summarize exploration targets, there are a bunch of things that you can or can't say, and we don't want to misrepresent it or misconstrue it. Don't make it look better than it actually is. When it comes to looking at volume, tonnage, grade values, these all need to be presented as a range. Because you know so little about the project at this stage, you can't give a single figure. And note, we're not talking about ranges as a statistical measure. It's simply the range between the smallest and the largest result in our samples. You also need to state the volume, the grade, and the diamond value. You can't quote one without the other. The example here is if this is our diamond deposit, we've got a volume and we have grade, the value is going to be extremely different depending upon the value of your diamonds. Okay, so moving then on to the reporting of diamond resources. According to SAMREC, that's the definition of a diamond resource. So the first thing we need to look at is reasonable prospects for eventual economic extraction. So if you're going to declare a resource, your project must have reasonable prospects for eventual economic extraction, or RPEEE. And the way we find that out is we demonstrate that through a high-level reasoned assessment that it has potential to be economic. We use the term high-level assessment. We're not looking for a scoping study, definitely not a pre-feas or a feasibility study, but very definitely more than we simply believe that the project could be economical. When looking at RPEEE, we really need to answer the question, is there a fatal flaw that prevents this project from being a commercial success? So we would look at all of these features here, geological, mining, processing, various other issues, to see if there is potentially a fatal flaw in any of these issues. Excuse me. The term eventual economic extraction asks the question, can this deposit be mined now or only at some defined time in the future? So we would look at all of these issues and see whether any problems that we have could be resolved in the future. We're not talking about an undefined time scale. Could it be resolved in 300 years' time? Typically, for a kimberlite, we'd be looking at less than 10 years, and alluvials generally 3 to 5 years. I want to highlight too that some of the other codes don't use reasonable prospects for eventual economic extraction. They've left out the term eventual and simply use reasonable prospects for economic extraction, meaning that the project has to be commercially now and not at some time in the future. The second thing we look at in our resource definition would be the geological model, drilling and sampling. We don't tell you in terms of SAMREC how many holes you have to drill, how many samples, how big the sample has to be. That is obviously dependent upon the geology of your specific site. And yes, you're going to have different parameters for different deposits, depending upon the shape, the grade variation, the number of different facies or geological domains. I want to highlight this one here. In complex deposits, it might be very difficult to ensure that the samples taken are truly representative of the whole deposit. And this is specifically true of alluvial deposits, but some kimberlites as well. Now, in such complex deposits, you are going to need to do much more drilling and sampling than you would expect to do on a more simple deposit type. Okay, the next thing is that a diamond resource cannot be estimated in the absence of reliable, verifiable sampling information from the property or the geological unit in question. So again, from a diamond resource point of view, you can't determine a grade based on the production data from an adjacent body or guy next door. So if this was your kimberlite that you were looking to evaluate, you wouldn't be able to base a resource on information from these kimberlites over here. And in an alluvial setting, yes, you can see that people have mined here, and you may have anecdotal information about so many carats per 100 ton people thought came out of there. But unless you can verify that, you can't use it as a resource estimate. Estimating volume also needs to be based more than on pure remote sensing or geophysics alone. So in this example here, you wouldn't be able to put an envelope around your gravel areas and say, okay, that's our resource volume. Neither for a kimberlite, put a line around it and model it. Even if you have some really great geophysical modeling, you need to have some corroborating drilling or pitting data. Obviously, the better your modeling, the fewer drill holes you need to put down, but there does need to be some physical corroboration of the geophysics or the remote sensing. We speak about realistic extrapolation around data points. So if we go back to our alluvial system, if we had a single hole over here and a single hole over there, and we extrapolated that to the entire deposit, that is not realistic. Neither is the spotted dog situation. The last thing that we start looking at is disclosing the basis of classification for each category that we use. Use the standard classification schemes, inferred, indicated, and measured for a diamond resource. And just to note that in many cases, probably in most cases, measured resources and proved reserves not appropriate for diamond deposits. And in marine deposits, sometimes even indicated is also a bridge too far. Just to note, when we look at diamond reserves, we have probable and proved. That is proved with a D. Proved with a D is South African, it's European, and it's Australian. Proven with an N is North American. When we talk about grades, you can talk about it in terms of volume, area, or mass. But if you do use tonnage, then we need to have as much information as possible about how you've addressed these density issues. In any sort of resource statement or tabulation, volume or tonnage, grade, and quality or value need to be disclosed. You also need to, or you can't disclose only the included carats unless you have spoken about quantity and grade as well. Any statement of resource must include the bottom cutoff size, and you cannot include exploration targets or historical estimates in a resource statement. Moving down from inferred through to measured, we need to look at the increasing level of geoscientific knowledge and confidence. And this is based really upon the amount of sampling as well as the uncertainty in demonstrating spatial relationships. And nowhere is this more important than when you're looking at low-grade, large stone deposits. We don't tell you what classification criteria to use. That's entirely determined by the competent person based on their experience, their competence, industry best practice, and so forth. But we do ask you to justify it, explain it to us, justify it. Because the classification criteria are important so that readers can make up their own mind if they agree with your classification. When it comes to estimation techniques, we don't tell you what estimation techniques to use or how to use them. We simply ask for transparency in their application. And again, this is particularly important when you use new, non-standard, or little understood methodologies. Here we need you to explain in detail what you are doing and justify why it's the best way for your specific deposit. When we look at diamonds, this is mostly applicable in grade and value models. Don't just gloss over your methodology and assume that everyone is just as au fait with the method as you are. Remember, you're writing for the educated layman. And especially when it comes to geostatistical estimations, while these are very common and well known in kimberlite and marine deposits, if you are applying geostats to an alluvial deposit, we will need you to justify its applicability. Microdiamonds. Again, microdiamonds are not applicable to secondary deposits. SAMREC tells us that a diamond resource classification requires both diamond grade and diamond value. And it's diamond grade you can estimate using microdiamonds, but diamond value requires macro diamonds. You cannot get a diamond valuation based on microdiamonds. So if you're on an exploration program and you've got microdiamond data, but you've not yet bulk sampled to recover sufficient macros, you cannot declare a diamond resource at that stage. Having said that we need macro diamonds before we can estimate value and thus declare a diamond resource, there are circumstances where you can extrapolate grade and value without having a sufficiently large parcel of macros. And these are generally where you've got geological homogeneity and continuity, a preliminary SFD, and also, again, justification and explanation in detail. Just to note that there is no such thing as an in situ production grade. Often we see reports where a sample grade has been taken and multiplied by one or other fudge factor based on an assumed process efficiency to get a theoretical in situ grade, and that grade is then carved in stone as the project grade. Macro diamond grade is very dependent on the technology used. We often see disparities between grades from a bulk sampling, which might have been done maybe on a rotary pan plant. And then they come back and do some trial mining, which has been done on a different technique, such as the DMS or the Burovesnik. In your reporting, it's really important to state the processing method, the processing efficiencies, and then also show reconciliations as processing methods change. And no matter what method you use, please don't forget to state the bottom cutoff screen size. And if you are basing your recovered grades based on factors associated with microdiamond content, then simply tell us all the details. And when you refer to diamond sizes, it's useful for the competent person to discuss which sizing definition they are using. And if you're using more than one system, such as Tyler mesh or square mesh for grade and DTC or grainers for value, put up a simple table. It certainly helps people to understand the correlations or conversions between them. These are the definitions of inferred, indicated, and measured diamond resources. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail regarding them. I simply want to highlight two features. For all three, inferred, indicated, and diamond, there needs to be information regarding quantity, tonnage or volume, as well as grade and average diamond value. And this is quite different to other commodities where you may simply present quantity and quality. Here, we definitely need value. Also fundamental to the definition is the size of the parcel of diamonds that you've used to value. And here is where Samrit gives some guidance on the size of parcel that should be used to value at any particular classification level. So for an inferred diamond resource, a minimum of 500 carats is recommended. And for an indicated diamond resource, anything between 1,000 and 2,500, depending upon the variability of your deposit. Those are guidelines. But under certain circumstances, you're obviously going to need to use a much larger parcel if your variability is extremely high. But if you do so, please, the CP needs to discuss the rationale behind the numbers that they have selected and the level of confidence, all of which, of course, is based upon a size frequency distribution. And so for all resource classification levels, please provide a diamond size frequency distribution. And this is for kimberlites, for alluvials, for marine, for any level of classification. And again, we give some guidance, and these are pretty much the same numbers as you have seen in the previous slide. And just to note how an SFD can change depending upon the numbers, have a look at this size frequency here. All three of these lines are from exactly the same deposit. The green line is at 500 carats. The blue line is at 2,500 carats. And the red line is at 50,000 carats. So do be aware of size frequency distribution diagrams at low numbers of diamonds. With respect to parcel value, it's obvious, but not always the case. Must be on a representative run-of-mine parcel. Don't only select out the gem quality plus 10 characters. Also your bottom cutoff size. So the valuation must be the same as for your grade estimation, obviously when you're working with macro diamonds. So don't do your grade on 2 mil cutoff and your valuation on a 6 mil cutoff. The valuation needs to be less than 6 months old. And here's an old diagram by Zimnisky Paul, who shows very clearly that if you do your valuation at this date, but you present it here or here, you're going to be wrong. So you want your valuation date as close to your presentation date as possible. There are, again, occasions where you can revalue or look at value frequency curves and base value on current data. Diamonds, and especially the gemstone varieties, are greatly affected by economic conditions, whether they be global, such as COVID, the 2008 stock exchange crash, the current war in Europe, but it can also be affected by major local or regional events. So just be aware of what is happening and look at the relevance of the timing of your valuation. Technical studies, these are based on SAMREC tables 1 and 2, whether it be a scoping, a pre-feas, or a feasibility study. You'll find the information in the SAMREC tables. This is effectively a study of the various modifying factors that will take your in situ kimberlite and convert it into a mineable reserve. Technical studies of diamonds look at exactly the same features as any other commodity. Just a note on bulk sampling and trial mining. Typically, the term bulk sampling refers to the resource estimation program. This is taking it from an exploration target to an inferred resource classification. And it really is the scoping study that supports progress to trial mining. The trial mining, this is where you upgrade your inferred resources to indicated resources. And it pretty much is, particularly in the alluvial space, the trial mining is the pre-feasibility study that can convert your indicated resources to probable reserves. There's not a whole bunch of difference between bulk sampling and trial mining, except perhaps the scale. And as you can see here, you can move from a bulk sampling operation through a trial mining and into a full-scale operation without much ado. So having done your technical study, you can convert your diamond resource to a diamond reserve, and the requirements are no different from reserve estimation on any other deposit type. Maybe just the scale when it comes to smaller deposits. So to summarize, anything pre-resource, historical estimates, exploration targets, mineralizations, you cannot do a technical study on them. and they cannot be converted to a reserve. An inferred diamond resource, you can do a scoping study on it, but it cannot be converted into a reserve. An indicated diamond resource, you can do a pre-feas or a feasibility study on it to get to a probable diamond reserve, and a measured diamond resource can be converted to a proved diamond resource, again through the application of the applicable studies. Just a few notes on the actual writing up of your competent persons report after you've done the evaluation. The formatting, SAMREC does give guidance on the chapter headings that you could use over here, but it is not a requirement. You could also use the table 1 headings if you preferred, or you may have a personal preference, or you might be working for a company that has a corporate standard. That is not a problem. The only thing that we require is that you do not fill out table 1 JORC style. That is not acceptable under the SAMREC code. Also, I just want to highlight here the use of plain language in writing up a report. Yes, there is necessary jargon and necessary technical content, but write to facilitate understanding, not to obfuscate. This is the SAMREC table 1, and you'll see the different sections and the information required under each section. Section 10 looks at the reporting of diamonds and gemstones. Please note that this information needs to be included in each of these sections. It is not a separate section. So you don't write your normal CPR with all this other information and then add on section 10. This must all be incorporated. Table 1 can be downloaded from the website as an Excel spreadsheet. Now, you do not have to fill out table 1 every occasion. It's for first-time reporting and material change reports. And effectively, what we're asking you to do with table 1 is, under a report section, just put the chapter where you have written about it. You don't have to write details in there, just where did you cover this? If it's not applicable to your report, just put in there, not applicable, reason being. It's what we call filling it out on an if not, why not basis. Code compliance should be viewed as a protection to the investor, to the general public, and also to the competent person and the company who is producing the report, because it helps you to know what is relevant, what's important, and it's there to prevent complaints against you. The codes are not designed to be onerous, but as I said, as a protection. After all, would you buy a house where the wiring was not up to code? Would you work in a mine where the safety is substandard? So why would you want to be part of a project that is not prepared according to a code? And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tanya. Questions and answers? Who wants to kick off? Okay, so I'll kick off, Tanya. I mean, how are these compliance systems working today? I mean, are you seeing more and more buy-in and people doing it properly? And my second question is always in these things is, you know, accountability and holding those people who, you know, mislead the public or misspend their funds to account. You know, so often you hear of, you know, shady deals, if we can call it that, but we never see any consequences. You've got perhaps comment on that.
Okay, let me start off by talking about the application of the codes. We've certainly seen in the documents going to the stock exchange, a major improvement. A number of years ago, when the readers panel was first set up, looking at all reports that went into the JSE, we noted that it took at least 3, 4, 5, 6 times going through the readers panel before reports were considered good enough to actually put on the exchange. Over the last couple of years, we've noticed that the majority of documents go through the readers panel in 2, maybe 3 times. Some of the, many more of them go through the first time. So there is greater application of the codes. And we would like to think that it is because people are becoming more understanding of what the codes are and what the codes are about. One of the shortfalls of codes, and this goes for codes all over the place, is that they are applicable to stock exchanges. They can be controlled by stock exchanges, state departments, companies. But when they get out into the public domain by people who are writing for smaller companies who are not listed, we've got no big stick with which to, what I'm looking for. We can't control it. We've got no way to control it. The issues with complaints, yes, we all see lots of things wrong with reports. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but if you don't complain to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange or the SAM Code Standards Committee, there's nothing that they can do. The SSC, the SAM Code Standards Committee, we do not have the time or the energy to go and read every report and hunt down people who do things wrong. If you see something that you do not believe is correct, write us a formal letter and we can do something about it. There's a question here from Kitani. Are the 3 SAM codes applied to diamond mines, or they're mining coal or something else? The SAM codes, the SAM rec code is applicable to all solid minerals. There's a diamond specific section looking at diamonds. There's a coal specific section looking at coal. And there's a generic section that looks at most other things. There's also a specific section that looks at industrial minerals. There is one that looks at the valuation of deposits. And then there's the oil and gas code as well. Brooke, you have a question?
Oh, it's a question and a comment. You know, in Canada, with disclosure of diamond resources, especially early stage resources where there's a diamond valuation that has quite a range, quite a range of modeling. There's a lot of discussion about, there've been a few examples where projects have not even come close to meeting the valuations projected even in their feasibility studies. And there's just discussion on who should take responsibility for the valuation data. Like I've even had discussions with exchange people that said, well, your evaluator needs to be a qualified person. Well, none of the diamanteurs and people like that could ever be a qualified person. So it falls on the qualified person that's writing the report to vouch for the valuators. And that's a real tough one, especially when it's a 500 carat parcel, especially at the early stages. But even at the advanced stages, people are modeling parcels with, say, 5,000 carats. And I don't know how do you have a suggestion or a mechanism that you verify or give the investor some assurances to the valuation information, I guess is the question for you.
Well, Brooke, we have pretty much the same problems and discussions here. It's not a way to get around it completely, but we just put down the qualifications of the person who does the valuation. So again, that the reader can look at it and say, Daniel did the valuation. These are his qualifications and his experience. I think I'm going to believe him, or no, I actually don't like his new haircut, so I'm not going to follow his valuation. But no, we haven't come to a reasonable way to get around that either yet. We're actually looking to see what you guys are doing so we can also follow suit.
Thank you. Great talk.
Okay. Any other questions, Herman? You and I have had discussions about compliance and the cost thereof, and the challenges that it also presents, particularly obviously to smaller companies. I mean, would we have found all these diamond deposits if we had the layers and expensive compliance that we have today?
Yeah, look, John, this is a complex topic. You know, as the diamond industry grew in Canada, and basically during my career, I've seen layers and layers of compliance come in particular as a result of BRICS. And now it's actually very expensive to have an independent competent person's report, or QP report as they are known in Canada. It's expensive to have those reports done. I can tell you that the Chidliak, which was a project that Brooke was also involved with, bringing that to the point where we had resources declared and a marketable product, which ultimately De Beers bought out the whole of Peregrine Diamonds. The technical reports that were written for Chidliak were around 200,000 Canadian dollars a piece. And there were 4 or 5 of them written during that period. So that's $1 million Canadian, just to get the technical report cycle up to the end of preliminary economic analysis. So that's a considerable expense, and the small guy is being excluded. That's for sure.
Herman makes a point. That isn't even a feasibility study or a pre-feasibility study. That is just a preliminary economic assessment, which makes no guarantee or vouches for mining viability, really. So just think of the costs once you start to go to pre-feasibility and feasibility.
Look, there is no doubt that there is a cost associated with it. In many cases, the costs are exorbitant. But I dare say the answer to that is consider the alternative. Have another BRICS. Or the example of the diamonds in Cameroon that I discussed a couple of days ago, where a company listed in Korea, where they do not have any requirements, put up a valuation of their deposit. They called it a diamond reserve. They indicated that they had 786 million carats. And when they actually started mining, well, there wasn't anything there, and the company disintegrated. Now, if that, if Korea had, or the Seoul Exchange had have had a code, that would never have happened. I don't know what the answer is. Somewhere in between.
Tanya, can I just chip in with something? I mean, we've been discussing, what everyone would understand as a public report. But if you read the definition of a public report in all of the codes, virtually any document that a professional geologist or an engineer or that, let's just stick to geologists, that a professional geologist provides to a client could fall into the definition of a public report. And the reason I say that is because, for smaller companies and for people who are not listed, they are going to use that report to make economic decisions of their own, or they're going to use it as a basis to provide, to find private funding elsewhere. Now, it leads on also to the comment about, and since this is a course that we're giving, sort of career advice to many of the listeners too, they need to understand that as soon as you provide a professional report, and you give it to someone, it goes out of your control. And even with all the disclaimers that you can put in there, whoever receives that report can use it for any purpose that he wants. And then it becomes dangerous to the professional concern. So you need to make sure that you have covered your backside as far as making sure that whoever reads that report understands what's going on. They can always pull pages out, and they do. You never give them a Word version. You always give a lot PDF. There are lots of things that you need to consider, because clients put geologists under a lot of pressure to get the results that they want, rather than the results that reflect reality. And that's the most important key thing that everyone listening in must understand: the importance of integrity in terms of the information that you provide to a client and to other people.
Very true, Bill. Thanks.
Yeah, Bill, I mean, it's a bit of a sad reflection on, on the world that we live in today. And unfortunately, I think you had a bit of a nasty experience, so you've got, scars to show for it. But I think it also goes back to, the importance of the individual's integrity. And I guess, we've all learned, and fortunately, we've all had lots of good experience that, there's certain clients or certain banks or, certain people, when they walk in the door, you just aren't going to do work for them. And I guess, we've both seen where work has been done and reports have been written sort of at the insistence, or shaped to the insistence of the client, with downside as a consequence. So, I guess the big lesson here for all of us, and particularly for young students, you can't buy back your reputation. You can't buy back your integrity. So, when you get into projects or you're doing work and it's not looking good, rather be honest and say, look, this is not going to work, and don't expect me to, write a report or sign off on it. Sometimes we all know it's just best to walk away from projects that we see are just not good. Okay, other questions, comments? Thanks, Tanya. That was excellent and very well presented. Obviously, compliance is important, but I think if you do it properly, it's and it's well presented, and you present the results as they are, and very often those results are going to be negative. And then you adhere to that line. You don't sort of bow to the client.
John, I just have to make just one more comment about the Chidliak example that I did quote.
Yeah, please.
And it's one that Brooke has also brought up. We took that to a preliminary economic analysis, which is not even there were no indicated resources declared, but it was a high confidence set of reporting and work that was done. And the result of taking it to that approach was that a major diamond company made an offer on the basis of those technical reports, which were disclosed in the public domain, prior to there being an indicated resource declared. So the flip side of compliance to the extent that we did the work at Chidliak is that you can get an investor involved at an early stage in a project if you disclose your data publicly and defensively, even before you have an indicated resource declared. So the advantage of following the codes and going through the compliance process, it has the other advantage is that you then have a publicly defensible set of technical data that's out there, and that people can attach a value to.
Yeah, Herman, I mean, I think that's a very valid point and well presented. I mean, I guess what you're saying is it also goes back to transparency. So,
Yeah.
if you've got clients in the background, be honest and open. If you see challenges, tell them, and, do it to the best of your ability. And of course, the other good thing we have today, we have all these multiple tools, which you have, highlighted so well to us through the course. So yeah, compliance is important, and equally transparency. And my experience of Canada, probably the best thing that the Canadian diamond discoveries did to the industry as a whole was bring about, some almost, the transparency almost went overboard, but you'll know that better than me.
Mm-hmm.
I will quickly introduce Bill McKechnie. Bill has a BSc Honours in Geology from Aberdeen University, and you would have heard his accent, which kind of is a giveaway. He's an extremely highly experienced exploration and project development geologist with more than 45 years experience in the international mining and metals industry at executive level, strategic and operational level. Bill's also had a particularly long and successful career in diamonds, most of it with De Beers. He was, for example, part of the original team that discovered the Phoenicia diamond mine in the northern part of Limpopo many years ago. So thanks, Bill. Thanks for making time to listen to all these talks, and we look forward to both your presentation and wrap up.
Thanks, John. Okay, I'm not on mute. Good. Okay, thanks very much for the invitation to present here. It's been an interesting 2 weeks. I'm sure it's been the case for everyone. This course covers an immense scope in terms of the industry that we're involved in, a very broad field. A lot of the information that we've been discussing, of course, is really developed scientifically over the last 50 to 60 years. Especially those parts that relate to diamond exploration, which is my main field of interest. Having heard so much in the last 2 weeks, it's obviously difficult to avoid duplication, but I've done as much as I can to try and avoid that, and hopefully you'll agree. And I'd also just like to point out that next year is the 50th anniversary of the first International Kimberlite Conference that was held in Cape Town in 1973. So many of the things that we've listened to this week have really developed out of the lines of research that were put in place at that time. And all the new developments have taken place because of the tremendous exploration success that the industry has enjoyed over that period, as well as all the scientific input that we've seen and has been explained by Herman and others. Okay, I'm going to look at, in this presentation, I'm going to give an update on diamond exploration budgets as reported by S&P Global that report annually on these things as part of their mineral intelligence outputs. I'll look at global diamond point of view of mining, but from the point of view of, well, maybe what does it tell us about the places that we are interested in exploring in? And then I'll finish off by looking at the diamond exploration outlook. But just a bit of a disclaimer, obviously, the conclusions at the end will be probably a bit subjective. I've tried to avoid personal prejudices wherever possible. But given the experience that I've had in the last 40 odd years, that's pretty well almost impossible, I would guess. But we can discuss that after the presentation, hopefully. Let's see where we go. Okay, global exploration budgets. This is the picture that I picked out of S&P Global's Mineral Intelligence Report that was published in April 2022. So it's really hot off the press. Now they describe exploration budgets for the change from 20 to 2021. So I'm not exactly sure if this is a budget or an actual expenditure, but they have data going back to 1997. So let's take it as meaning what is spent or what is being intended to be spent. On the left-hand side, this is a waterfall chart. For those not familiar, it shows the change from one year to another. And on the left-hand side, we have a budget, all commodities exploration budget of just over $8.3 billion for 2020. And on the right-hand side is the budget just under $11.3 billion for 2021. So that's quite a big change over that period. And the green bars and the red bars show the individual changes for the commodities listed on the bottom of the graph. And it's quite clear that diamonds is the only commodity that has got less money this year or 2021 than it had the previous year. And we'll explore that now. Okay, so again, looking at the overall all commodity budgets, the top bar chart shows the trend of global exploration budgets from 1997 all the way through to 2021. The global peak was in 2012. You can see there about $20 billion. So that's already almost double what we are at the moment. And then there was a big dip after 2012 down to about 2015, rising up again until 2020 when you see a dip again because of the global pandemic. But it's luckily picked up again in 2021. Then moving down to the middle, you can see the circular, the middle left shows the breakdown of that $11.3 billion by mine site, grassroots, and late stage and feasibility. The grassroots and late stage feasibility really covers the sort of field of exploration that we would be involved in. But there is some overlap on late stage and feasibility with mine site, and it always depends on who fills in the form and that they give to the S&P. So you see that there's always a bit of muddying of the water in that particular area. The grassroots is fairly clear, and it's only something like 20, and it's a small, I think it's about 26% of the total budget to grassroots. That's the discovery process. That's really what we would understand as real exploration. And then late stage and feasibility, dealing with bringing a project to account, feasibility, preliminary economic assessment, pre-feasibility study, feasibility study, the sort of things that Herman was now talking about that he did for Chidliak. And then mine site is mainly brownfields work done on existing properties, whereby people are maybe trying to extend the life of the existing mine, and just under 40% of that $11.2 billion is going into that type of activity. And then next to that is the breakdown of who is spending the money. So 50% is being spent by the majors. And it's interesting that 37% of that money, according to S&P, is being spent by juniors, $4.1 billion. Just note that number for future reference. Gold and copper are the most targeted commodities. Then here on the right-hand side, what we see is a chart of exploration-related financings for junior and intermediate companies. You see an increasing trend. It's a quarterly graph, so that's why it's not yearly. It's running from every quarter through 2014 to 2021. And in last year, total funds raised by junior and intermediate companies was $21.55 billion. And of that, 4.1 billion is committed by juniors for exploration budgets in 2021. So you see it at 61% year-on-year increase on 2020. And just under 2,000 companies are actively exploring in 2021 and responded to the S&P surveys on which all this data is based. Now, moving on to diamond exploration. This is the sad story of diamond exploration. And there we see on the left-hand side, the top table, 2021 diamond budgets. Total amount is 201.5 million, not billion, million US dollars. And the number of companies that report being involved in diamond exploration to S&P 2021 is only 34. So that's 34 out of almost 2,000 companies. And some of those are majors. Some of that 34 are majors. So the number of juniors is even less. On the chart below, you see a breakdown of diamond exploration expenditure all the way from 97 to 2021. In 1997, just over $200 million. And what we're spending in 2021 is actually less than was being spent on diamonds in 1997, and considerably less than the almost $1 billion that was spent in 2007 when diamond exploration was at its peak, just before the global financial crisis. So you had the inevitable drop down in 2009, up to another small peak in 2012, and then dropping down again to the current stage. There virtually hasn't been more than a 2 or 3% increase every year in any given year for the last 3 to 4 years. On the right-hand side, just for reference, top table, you can compare the budgets for the different categories of exploration for all commodities versus diamonds. And then below on the chart, you can see a chart of the all commodities budget versus in red what is being spent on diamonds. It's a minuscule amount. So who's spending it and where in 2021? The table on the left-hand side shows we've got 3 majors, Alrosa, Rio Tinto, and De Beers. And notice the next one down, SM Katoka. That's a Katoka company in which Alrosa also has an interest. So you can add that as additional expenditure in Angola. And then I've just listed a few of the other companies that are reasonably well known and of interest that are also spending money. And then there's a batch of others that will be spending just under $3 million of the 200, which is less than 1.5%. Of the $200 million. So something like 80% of the actual budget is being spent by the majors. And in terms of grassroots exploration, I don't have the total there. Total diamond exploration is 1.8% of the $11 billion committed, and only a third of it is spent of the diamond budget is spent on grassroots exploration, with something like 88% of it being spent by the majors. So very little happening on that side from the junior side. And on the right-hand side, you see the country spend for the different places. Alrosa, spends over $100 million a year on early and late stage, and that doesn't include their mine site exploration, which is quoted separately. And then Canada and Angola, there's a reasonable amount going into there. Most of the Angolan expenditure is going into Liashi, I believe, although no detail was provided. So I think the big takeaway from this is that when you compare the number of companies overall that are involved in diamonds compared to the rest of the world and other commodities, so a very small number of companies involved. The proportion of budget has always been reasonably small, but at one time, 2003, when diamonds were at their peak, it was actually 14% of the total budget. So there's been a huge reduction over the years. And just to touch on something that Mike DeWitt brought up in his presentation as well, it's not, diamonds haven't got a bad name because they're doing worse than other commodities in terms of discovery. On the left-hand side, those are the trends for gold and copper respectively, and they're spending more and more money and finding less and less, but they're still getting plenty of money. Like for gold, over $10 billion in 2021. And I threw in the picture on the right-hand side just to show where that money is going to in terms of the regions. Okay, moving on to actual diamond exploration and you know, what we are involved in and looking at. We've heard a lot about cratons and diamonds over the last couple of weeks. And Herman did a great job of explaining what we've learned from kimberlitic indicator mineral chemistry and how important a tool that is. And the new kimberlite discoveries in the last 50 years, where kimberlites and diamonds weren't previously known, has expanded our understanding of the Earth's lithosphere to a tremendous extent. But we can only learn that by finding new kimberlites, lamproites, and whatever else brings these indicator minerals up to the surface. So you have to find them first before you can actually do anything. It's a bit of a chicken and egg type of situation. So to get a view on the potential of the underlying the lithosphere below these cratons, you need information by finding these new kimberlites through exploration, perhaps using the various technologies that we've heard about previously. So today, I think most cratonic regions are reasonably well defined in general outline now compared to when Tom Clifford wrote his paper in 1966. And this is one of the figures taken from that paper then, which just shows how he defined cratonic areas in Africa and identified the association of diamonds, gold, platinum. He also had figures for other minerals as well, but this one deals only with diamonds, golds, and platinum, and the oldest cratonic areas in Africa. And he identified orogenic belts younger than 1,200 million years between the cratons and cratonic areas older than 1,500 million years. Of course, now, in terms of greater detail on each of these cratons, the information that we've gathered over the last 50 years has given us the opportunity to find better looking at areas than the ones he's identified. So there always has been this story about, well, what is the best craton? And then in the early 1980s, Bram Janse brought out a paper detailing this, and this was just after the discovery of the lamproid occurrences, diamondiferous lamproid occurrences in Australia in the late 1970s, where you had lamproids that weren't kimberlites, and you were finding diamonds reputedly on non-cratonic areas. Like Ellendale in the Halls Creek zone. Since then, I think the feeling is that these are possibly marginal to cratons or whatever, but that's the way it was. And Bram, bless his heart, gave us this diagram explaining the different giving descriptions for these different parts of cratons. The purple are areas over 2.5 billion years old. The green areas were what he called protons between, I think, 1500 and 2500, and then surrounding it tectons, everything younger than 1500. You'll find that in the literature, but it's not given much attention these days, I don't think. And people tend to talk broadly still about cratons, but then add in the relevant age information when they're discussing it. Now, the relationship that's been mentioned is Clifford's rule, which implies that diamondiferous kimberlites erupted through the oldest Archean portions of the cratons, whereas non-diamondiferous kimberlites erupted through younger rocks. Now, even though this paper was published in 1966, already in Russia in the 1930s, Vladimir Sobolev, who was Nick Sobolev's father, had published a paper on the geological similarities between South Africa and Siberia. And that triggered the diamond exploration after the Second World War that led to the fantastic discoveries in Yakutia at that time. Also, the research work that Tom Clifford was doing was funded by Anglo-American in South Africa via the Research Institute for Africa Geology at the University of Leeds. And other people and explorers were also interested in this. And that's where Bram's map actually comes from, because all these ideas led to the exploration in northern Australia and elsewhere, looking for new kimberlites and diamond sources, and led to the discovery of the Australian lamproite deposits. So here we are now. We're now in 2021. We know a lot more about cratons than we did in 1996, and a lot of exploration has been carried out in most parts of the world. So what is that going to mean going forward? So when we look at the world in diamond world in 1966 compared to 2022, there's a huge difference. The lamproites in Australia, new deposits in Canada, new deposits in northwestern Europe on the East European platform, and quite a lot of new deposits in Botswana and also in South Africa and elsewhere. So there's been a tremendous amount of exploration success. So do we think that means that everything significant has been found? And it was quite interesting listening to Pat yesterday, because he used a definition of, if I wrote it down correctly, $2 billion worth of diamonds produced to be a significant mine. Well, you can argue about what number is appropriate, but there've been quite a few of those that have been found in the last few years. And the evidence that we see now in Angola shows that, well, to everyone's surprise, that there is another one, regardless of what people thought maybe 5 years ago or whatever. So there is life still in the old dog in terms of exploration potential in this world. And, is it still worthwhile continuing with exploration to try and find more of these things? But remember that the term significant will mean one thing to a major like a Rio or a De Beers or an Alrosa, but something different to a smaller outfit or organization. Very important to remember that. Now, this next slide is also courtesy of Bram Jansen, with some modifications by me on the right-hand side. Bram published this in 2007, and it shows the global diamond production history from 1870 all the way through to 2005. And then I've used the kimberlite process statistics since then, up until 2020, because there are no 2021 numbers yet, to tack it on to the end there. And sorry about the cartoon nature of it, but I didn't have any access to Bram's data. And the data sources are given in the references at the bottom of the slide. So what Mike DeWitt also showed a similar chart in his talk, but I'm not going to go into the detail of how he described all the different producers. But what this chart really shows is just the three main phases of diamond production that we've seen over the last 150 years. First of all, the period up until the middle of the First World War, South African kimberlite producers. That's where De Beers was virtually the only game in town. And then between the First World War and up until 1970 was really the period when the large African placer producers were dominant in the global market. And then, starting in the 1950s with the discovery of the Russian kimberlite deposits, and all the way through to that peak that we see in 2005 is the period where the global primary rock producers, and I have to say primary rock because you've got kimberlites and lamproites, have come to the fore. And you can see an absolute explosion, even though some of the discoveries were made in the 1950s and 60s, the real explosion in production started taking off in the 1980s, about the same time that Argyle started coming into production. So the peak there is at 177 million carats. And then it started declining and then hit the global financial crisis in about 2008, 2009, recovered slightly thereafter, and then hit a new peak around 150 million carats. I think it's in 2017 up here. And then it's been falling since then, and then took a plunge again with the global pandemic. And we've already seen there's a bit of a pickup, but I think people are starting to realize, and we had, I think maybe it was Lyndon that mentioned it, it's easier to continue than it is to start again once things have been shut down. And certainly in 2021, I looked at the Alrosa numbers and they're on the up compared to 2021 by 2 or 3 million carats. So it is a bit more difficult to pick up the pace again, but I'm sure it will increase further down the line. So the question then is, well, have we already achieved peak diamonds? Are we not going to see 177 million carats a year anymore? That's certainly something that Paul Zimnisky was querying when he gave his presentation right at the beginning of this course. Moving on to just the data that I've been using is for the recent stuff is Kimberley process statistics. This is a picture in 2022. World production of 107 million carats, more or less, from 24 countries. Not all listed there because there's no sense in that. Generating $9.23 billion in revenue, and the average price, so surprisingly low, $86. And I think you can see who the main producers are. Russia is still the standout in carats, despite reducing its output far more than any of the other individual producers. And I've combined West African countries into one group, otherwise you won't be able to see them, and all the others are in the other bucket. So 5 countries produced more than 10 million carats in 2020 each. Russia produced 46% more than the next highest producer, Botswana. 4 countries produced 1 million carats each, and those 9 countries make up 90% of the total carats mined in 2020. It's a staggering idea. The picture changes when you look at revenue, however. Botswana is marginally up in front, but Russia and Botswana, between the two of them, they account for 52% of total revenue. That's 52% from only 2 producing countries. And when you add in Angola, Canada, Namibia, and South Africa, those 6 countries are responsible for slightly over 90% of the total global revenue. That means there's $1 billion distributed between the other 18. We've heard in previous presentations, Alrosa and partners have got this large new kimberlite in Angola, which they're hoping to bring into production shortly. And I'm sure that will help to make up the carat shortfall caused by Argyle closing in the last year or so. That closure reduces the top carat producers to 4, but Angola will join obviously once Luashi comes into production. And it's an interesting situation to be in now where, I'm used to the idea of people saying, well, hearing about people saying, what are we going to do with all these diamonds? And now we're hearing, where are we going to get more diamonds? And that's a question that I'll discuss later in the talk when we look at the likelihood of exploration finding new major deposits in the short to medium term. We don't think and don't worry that the world is going to run out of diamonds. That's not the case. Between them, Alrosa and De Beers have got over 1 billion carats in proven and proved and or whatever probable reserves, and 1.4 billion carats in resources, according to their official statements. Okay, so for this presentation, I thought, why are we always looking at countries? We're geologists. Maybe let's look at how the breakdown by cratons. So what I've done here is this is what this represents, and what you see presented is the breakdown of percent carats for each of these individual cratons. This I've described as the Kalahari, combining Katval, Limpopo Belt, and Zimbabwe. It's more convenient. Kasai is Angola and the DRC, and I've split Russia into Yakutia and East European platform. And I've also been able to split the Canadian production as well. And it's quite an eye-opener, again, because you see, surprisingly, the Kalahari is out in front, followed by Yakutia, and then the Kasai. And then when you look at the revenue picture, it's quite astounding. I hadn't expected to see this, that the Kalahari produces almost 50%, in 2020, produced almost 50% of the world's diamonds in revenue. And Yakutia is only about 20% and only 5% from the European platform. And look at Argyle, only responsible for 1% of the revenue, whereas the slave is just under 10%. So that got me just thinking about how to look at this a bit differently. And then I plotted dollars against carats, and it's expressed as a percentage here. And then you can just see on the right-hand side, the Kalahari way out on its own, followed up by Yakutia, and then Kasai, Slave, and all the others. And all the other tiny producers, starting with West Africa, are over there close to the origin. They hardly show on the chart. Now you can do what you like with this. You can split up the Kasai into Angola and DRC. That's possible, and you can do it for individual producers as well. But obviously, I haven't done it. It's too much detail for this particular presentation. But what it does show is, remember, Herb Helmstedt made the statement. Cratons are not created equal. Well, this shows that in terms of diamond content, the Kalahari is head and shoulders above the others. But what about the history? What about the total picture? So I threw together all the data from Graham's paper and the kimberlite process, and I did the same for the period 1870 to 2020. And again, the Kalahari just completely sticks up head and shoulders above the others. Pat said yesterday it's difficult to work out what revenue to use. So what I've done is, to be consistent, I've got total carat production just multiplied by the most recent reliable dollar per carat numbers out of the kimberlite process. I didn't use 2020 because they're depressed, but I used an average between 2014 and 2016 when the last diamond price peak was on the go. And again, what's surprising is the Kasai's got more carats than Yakutia, but it's not surprising Yakutia has got higher revenue. And the Kasai is where it is because of the impact of the Mbuji-Mayi production from the Congo. So if you split up Angola and the DRC, you may see a different picture. And there on the left-hand side, West Africa and the slave, more or less equivalent. So it was quite interesting. So if we're looking, if there is this belief that the world needs, it's used to getting 150 million carats, and it's only getting 110, where are the other diamonds going to come from? So mining companies have got various choices. They can expand production from existing operations by increasing plant throughput or bringing unexploited resources on the property into production. But then you deplete your resources and reserves faster. So it's a short-term gain for a long-term loss. You can buy mines or projects owned by others, but it's not a net gain either because somebody's already found something or has something. So you're just swapping your marbles. That's all. Or you can find new mines through exploration, and that's where we come in. That long-term view is needed, but there's not going to be any quick fixes here. It takes time to discover. Time, as Herman explained, time for feasibility and development. You can perhaps speed things up by partnering with other explorers and mining companies, JVs or whatever. But one thing you got to get used to in exploration is that success doesn't come every day, and you've got to be able to cope with disappointment and stay positive and be prepared to get on with things the next day. So I put this together just from trolling through the internet on the various sites looking for diamond projects that are on the go, and just a bit of explanation about what we're calling the development pipeline here. Pat showed it yesterday in a mining context. This is more related to exploration. And here on the left-hand side, you've got exploration comprising discovery and mineral resource evaluation, and then projects and feasibility study. And that's any class of feasibility study from PFS all the way through to near development work. And then project development, mine construction and ramp up. And we're not saying anything about mining today. So here we have all the projects that are under development at the moment. The green is greenfields. Those are based on new discoveries. Not necessarily new. Some, like Star, has been around for a long time, but it's still greenfields. Lomonosov has been around for a while, but parts of it, it was originally greenfields. And Luele is definitely greenfields. And then you've got Mir, Merlin, Juaneng, Venetia Underground. All of those are brownfields. Now, the brownfields will only replace old production. It's not something new. All the green ones are something new. But there's only Luele at the moment that really looks as though it has the makings of a big new production. Then on the left-hand side, Herman described what was happening at Lulu. There may be something comes out of that. We still have to see. And in my research, I picked up Metalex Ventures in Canada. I was looking at, they claim to have a 10-hectare target in not far from Attawapiskat in Canada, close to Victor. And then there's also a project subject of a preliminary economic assessment in Finland at this place, which I'm not going to try to pronounce. So the business of exploration, in my view, for any mining company that's serious about diamond mining, exploration is an existential business process imperative. You have to do it. And Orosa has certainly bought into that. They are spending $100 million a year. A lot of it in Russia, I agree, but they've now broken out into Africa, into Angola, and to Zimbabwe. So for major diamond companies, it's about adding new reserves, maintain long-term business continuity. For major multi-commodity companies, sometimes they care less. You know, it's nice to add new reserves, but you know, that will only for them maintain divisional business continuity. And we've seen that with BHP, where they dip in and out of things, and they've now pretty well got out of the diamond business, despite being involved in it for 20 odd years. Then medium scale companies, they can't afford to spend a lot of money on exploration, but they need to be involved in something as part of their business development process, even if it's just reassessing existing deposits or adding to existing reserves by working with other people or whatever. And then junior companies, they're more entrepreneurial and opportunistic. If they are lucky enough to find something, the game is to advance it to mining, if at all possible, and then sell on at least part of it, if not all of it. And we've seen a lot of that happening in Canada in the last couple of years. So the big question, hasn't everything been found? And it's an old question that's periodically asked. I mean, I've been in diamond exploration for 40 odd years now. And there's always this perception that the best have all been found. And aren't diamonds difficult to find? Pat said yesterday, yeah, they are relatively easy to find, but it depends on where you are. You have to, it's maybe not difficult if you're in the right places, and the right places behave like they should do, and you do the right things. It's still not that easy. So where do we go? We'll look at the future opportunities, the sort of things that we think about. On the left-hand side, primary targeting. Now, these days, again, remembering cratons are not created equal. And a good thing to remember is nor are kimberlites and lamproites. So finding a kimberlite or lamproite is not the end of the game. That just gets you the starting ticket to perhaps finding something that is worthwhile or not. For me, cratons, in terms of the way we think about it, have a deemed inherent prospectivity based on the things that we have listed there: basement age, the intensity of kimberlite intrusion, order diamonds, and everything that goes with it. And then on the right-hand side, if we're involved in exploration today, what I'm calling secondary targeting, what's the amount of and type of work undertaken in the past? Because there are no virgin cratons left in terms of exploration, except on Antarctica. And there are already kimberlites there, we know that. Then you consider cover sequences, the geomorphology and terrain, very important, the weathering, erosional history, and the types of erosion, because that will determine the methodologies you used and how you interpret your results. And then exploration methodologies, what I call direct will be indicator sampling, indirect will be geophysics and other things. And then just to complicate things further, you need to organize your access, and you've got to think about physical access as well as legal access. And the legal access is sometimes even more difficult than the geology. Let me tell you about that. Okay, so we look at, regardless of where you are, what you're planning to do in the future, any new investigation will start with the search for diamonds and or kimberlitic indicator minerals. Remember, in the distant past, all of the major early finds in Kimberley, and certainly all the placer deposits, were found through direct detection of diamonds. But the two quotes I've put on there, and I'm not going to read them out, they come out of, the top one comes out of Brian Janss's paper, and he describes how it's reported in 1869 that the old prospectors had already identified the association between red garnets and diamonds. And then the second quote is out of Wagner's book in 1914, where he describes how the premier kimberlite, the Cullinan kimberlite, was found in the early 1900s. Well worth a read. So the indicator minerals, the traditional ones are pyrite garnet and ilmenite, certainly in Africa. And then when you're close to source, chrome diopside. Southern Africa, you can find the full suite. But in Central Africa, where you're dealing with tropical weathering, where garnet doesn't survive as well in soil and weathering profiles, ilmenite is the preferred indicator. And then out of Australia came chrome spinel later. And of course, in the Arctic regions, like in Yakutia and in Canada, you get the full suite of indicators, and you can use olivine to help direct things as well. So moving on to some of the areas that I'm going to discuss. I know that Yakutia isn't accessible to us, but we haven't really spoken about it this week at all. And apart from the mining yesterday with Pat, so I thought I should at least look through it and look at what, give you a bit of insight as to what Alrosa are doing. The left-hand side is a geological map published in 1978. It's available online. It's fantastic detail. It's an incredible map, and I've given two close-ups on the right-hand side of areas around Udachny and Mirny, respectively. So Pat described the mining areas in Yakutia yesterday. I'm not going to deal with those in details, but this is what Alrosa would describe as their open areas where kimberlites are exposed at surface. And this is the area of mainly Cambrian sediments. And around it is the basin of other sediments of Ordovician, Devonian, Triassic age, and also Jurassic down here, this dark blue. And what this shows is that many of the kimberlites that Alrosa has found actually lie under not only sedimentary cover, but even basalt cover, Triassic basalts. This is up in the north in Udachny, and taken out of these little dots here that you see are actual kimberlite pipes. This is the Udachny field here, and it lies in the exposed area. And this is the Icol field with Icol and Jubilee. And you can see they are already in this sort of greenish blue is the Thermo-Triassic basalts. This orange is Permian sediments, and these are the basalts. So some of these pipes were already covered and were found through prospecting in that covered terrain. And then down in the south, this is Mirny. Google Translate is fantastic. You can work out exactly what's going on this map. And then here you have the Mir pipe, and these ones here are International, Sputnik, and some of the others. And they were actually under relatively shallow cover. So tremendous exploration success, and you have to take your hat off to Alrosa in terms of what they were managed to achieve. And out of one of Alrosa's reports, I found this, where they have this chart where they say that discovery of new kimberlites is much more challenging now, and it shows here the change with time. And then the discoveries made in the 1990s are being found under 70 and 80 meters of cover. This is the New Urba field, which is shown here on the right-hand side. Sorry, my diamond has slipped down a bit. It's actually sitting here. And it was found under 70 to 80 meters of Jurassic cover. Now, there are placer deposits. They describe placer deposits around the pipes. So I suspect that there may have been some leakage of indicators out of the unconformity, but I don't know that for sure. And then this picture is some of the diamonds that I was shown in 1999 when I was in Yakutia. And these come from the Botubinskaya kimberlite that I'll show you now. I took this off of Google Earth. This is the New Urba kimberlite, which is the first one discovered, and then Botubinskaya, which now recently come into production just in the last few years. They're small, but tremendously rich, and they have a reasonably high diamond value. So you get a fantastic dollar per ton mine value, and they have placers. They have what they call the Maiskoi deposit or dike down here. Seems to have a reasonable tonnage, so they're looking to mine that as well. That's not why I've put this picture up. What you see here is how they've been going about their exploration. You see this grid pattern here. These are geophysical and drill lines, and these distances here are how far some of these lines go in the various directions of the compass. And then when they got a sniff, they fill in with more and more detailed geophysics and drilling in order to find these things. And they have other deposits that they have found that they're currently evaluating according to the reports, but there isn't any information provided about them. Okay, we discussed Alrosa diamond dollar per carat values. The dollar per carat value shown in the Kimberley process for Russia seems slightly depressed. And one of the reasons for it, if you look here, they produce diamonds down below 1.5 millimeters. Most other producers produced a bottom cutoff of 1.5 millimeters, whereas Alrosa, 30% of their carat production is below 1.5 millimeters. Although it's only that 30% is only 3% of the value. So the net effect is a 30% depression of the average diamond price if you were expressing it as at a 1.5 millimeter cutoff. It's not that simple, but it gives you a ballpark idea. And then also on the right-hand side, this is in the most recent report from Alrosa, shows the change in carat output. These will be million carats for these things. And then these are the individual dollar per carat values for each of these different deposits. You see this one, the Dyke 107, look at international, $172 a carat, and it's running at something ridiculous in excess of 5 carats per ton. I think Pat said yesterday 8 carats per ton. Anyway, I suggest if you want to look, go and troll the Alrosa website. It's well worth looking at. So moving over to Western Russia, it's always difficult. They talk about the Northeast European platform, but it's a lot of it is in Western Russia. So it's the most recent new development in production area post breakup of the Soviet Union. And it's really been opened up, I think, because of loss of control by Alrosa during the 1990s when all those changes were taking place. Alrosa had actually made these discoveries initially in the 1960s and drilled them out in the 1980s and did the bulk sampling then, but nothing happened until the early 2000s. And the two producing mines, the AGD's grid pipe, which is independent of Alrosa, and Alrosa is working these other two. And this is where they are, close to the city of Arkhangelsk. And these are the Lomonosov deposits. The Grib Verkhotina field here. These are only two fields that have got economic deposits in them, but there are a lot more kimberlites around there that Alrosa say, well, the commentators say are uneconomic. And the whole area is covered by something like 50 meters of Devonian sediments, which is older than the age of the kimberlites in that area, which is why I've put in this picture. And that's a picture of one of the mines being developed. Now, this whole area has been the subject of intense legal dispute for at least 10, 15 years up until about 2010, through 2010 to 2012. And it's only since then, for instance, the Grib deposit has started to be developed. So there's virtually been no new exploration done in this area since the 1990s. So I would expect that this area is still highly potentially prospective for new deposits as well. Okay, we're going to move on to Australia. And some of you might wonder, well, why Australia? Well, because it's interesting, because it doesn't fit the book. It doesn't fit the standard book. It has a long history of diamonds, 1851 in New South Wales alluvials here, early 1900s, a diamond found at Nullagine. But nothing much went on until the 1960s and 70s when everyone was getting into diamond exploration again all over the world. I'm not going to describe the detail of the Ellendale and Argyll discoveries, but they were made, as we all know. And then that really set off a lot of diamond exploration throughout Australia, and De Beers was part of that as well. It's not as if there are no cratonic blocks. There are plenty of big cratonic areas there, but exploration in Australia has been extraordinarily unsuccessful, apart from Argyll and Ellendale and Merlin, which in the last two, didn't last very long in terms of mining output. So Argyll was really the big find. And I guess the important takeaway from Australia is that it's much of the country lies under an intense weathering profile from the Cretaceous time. Got extreme weathering, lateritic weathering, and indicator minerals were being destroyed. Added to that, very few of the kimberlites in Australia have ilmenites, so ilmenites wouldn't help. Garnets were getting destroyed in the soil profiles, and spinel and diamond became the only indicator mineral. And it wasn't very widely disseminated that Argyll was actually found on diamond counts in stream samples, not on spinel, which is the normal sort of story. But Argyll was found on diamonds. So I've just to run through this quickly. These are the sort of soil profiles. This is in the left-hand side, in the kimberlites. Looks like a normal soil profile. I'll show you some similar ones from South Africa. And then on the right-hand side, this is up north in the Kimberleys, 1 to 2 meters of ferruginous soil overlying the kimberlite, highly kaolinized. But on top of the kimberlite, you can find spinels and what have you. But 10, 15 kilometers away, you will find virtually nothing. It's very difficult to find these things. And then on the Pilbara and the Yilgarn, a lot of prospecting was put into those cratonic areas over a very long period of time. A lot of money spent, and nothing was found, despite Nullagine, until the late 1990s, when all of a sudden De Beers found the Brockman dike on the Pilbara. And it's not as if this thing, was hidden. It was there in plain sight. That's it. It's outcropping, and there it is running for something like 20 kilometers into the distance. You can see it in the top there. It's incredible. Very low microdiamond counts found on spinel anomalies. When you were right on top of the dike, you could find a garnet, and this is what it looks like actually in the field. Macroacoustic olivine, all obviously pseudomorphed. But very interesting deposit, although no economics. So having found that, you could pretty well say, well, maybe all the work that was done in the past in Australia did show that there was nothing significant on the Pilbara. Similar thing in the Yilgarn, and this shows the examples of these thicker lateritic weathering profiles on the granites in the eastern goldfields. But as you move further westwards, these things are eroded. And what this whole area here is the underlying peneplain that is exposed once the overlying duricrust is removed. And once you do that, if there's a kimberlite, you can reduce the kimberlitic indicator minerals. And this is surface float over a kimberlite that was found on the Yilgarn, just these lumps of kimberlite. Again, a dike or a sill, we didn't do too much drilling on it. But it is whatever it is. But these bits of kimberlite were just lying around, and you can see the textures all silicified. And this is it actually on outcrop. So again, these things were found just on the basis of spinel indicator mineral sampling, nothing else at all. And the fact that Australia is different because of the types of the mineralogy of many of these deposits makes it a very difficult environment to explore and to walk away from. So moving on to the Kalahari Craton, we've discussed that. I counted up the number of mines, and there's something like almost 47% of the world's major diamond mines lie on the Kalahari Craton when you put the numbers together. And I think that shows in the diamond production, and we've discussed that a lot this week. I'm not going to go into the detail of the Craton, but in terms of this is where I've spent most of my career, certainly in terms of my early exploration days. And I'm pretty satisfied that the bulk of the Kalahari Craton has been explored to the extent that you can safely say there's no more very significant deposits to be found. It's quite possible that there may be one or two small things still sitting around, perhaps on the covered areas in the Kalahari Desert in Botswana. But then remember, north of Jwaneng, you run into the Karoo as well. So the area between Jwaneng and Orapa is only prospective for Cretaceous age kimberlites. There's maybe some potential that's still in some residual potential in parts of Zimbabwe because of the lesser amount of work that's actually been done. But some of the Zimbabwe kimberlites are outcropping, and they've also got funny signatures like we see in Australia, where you don't easily find the full suite of indicator minerals, but some of them have only got spinels. But for the Karp Vaal itself, and I'm using Karp Vaal as opposed to Kalahari, the main Karp Vaal, as you'll see in some of the pictures, the soils are thin. This is where Pat is quite right. If you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing, you will find kimberlites. And this is some examples, soil profiles anomaly. This is the Western Bushveld, thin soil, maybe 1 to 1.5 meters and straight into weathered bedrock. This is a kimberlite dike in Lesotho, very thin soil, not even, maybe less than a meter. And this is a typical garnet soil anomaly over a kimberlite dike running this way. And this is what you find on top of it. This is at follow-up. And these are the indicator counts that you get from fairly small samples. And this would have been found, this is a very flat area, just like this. And this would have been found on the basis of indicator minerals being dispersed downwards by this very low flat lying drainage. Just something different. This relates to the Dahlstrom dikes. And what's interesting about this photograph here is that this dike also lies under a lateritic weathering profile. And this is an ancient land surface. Probably it's not dated, but it's been highly weathered and ferruginized. You've got ferrocrete material here. And in the soil profile, you can't find any indicator minerals right above the kimberlite. It's only once you go deep 2-3 meters down that you find the actual kimberlite, and that's where it was dug out. This is 2 kilometers to the east, where there is no lateritic weathering profile, and you find the kimberlite on the basis of normal kimberlitic mineral sampling. You couldn't do that here. This was found by extension from elsewhere and drilling through the cover. And this just shows what the kimberlite looks like at this sort of depth. You can still see, you can see the kimberlite texture. It's quite clear what it is. A couple of other examples, kimberlite profiles. This is over Palmytgat kimberlite, lumps of basalt there, and you can see lumps of basalt retained in the overlying soil profile. It's also about a meter thick. That's Jan Stiefenhofer when we were up there. An outcropping kimberlite in Zimbabwe. It's interesting that most of the outcropping kimberlites that I've seen in Southern Africa have been either in the Limpopo belt or in Zimbabwe. And on this side, we see this is the soil profile over Marsfontein in the northern Transvaal. Sorry about the picture, I didn't take them, but tried to put them together. But this is a zone of super enrichment, and from in this area, the grade was running at something like 14 carats per ton at $200 a carat. It was just incredible. And this is just an area where, even though it was a small pipe, you had this near surface enrichment over the top of the kimberlite. Always something to look out for. So moving over to the Kasai, I'm conscious I'm over time. I'm only going to talk about Northeast Angola because that's what I regard as prospective, and I'm not going to touch on the Congo side of the border. Here we have a map of Southern Africa with the area in Northeast Angola outlined in yellow. This is an old map from that I picked up on the internet. just shows the non-kimberlites that were found, that have been found in the valleys running north-south into the Congo. I should just point out, this is the Kalahari basin, which extends into northern Angola. And all these interfluve areas here are covered by Kalahari and Kalonda sediments. And the kimberlites that were discovered in the 60s and early 70s in Angola all tended to be in these valley areas. So De Beers went back, and they were there in the 1990s and early 2000s. And this picture is of kimberlite found underneath the Kalahari and one of those interfluves. It's about, as you can see there, it's over 150 meters of material. And De Beers reported that these things are sub-economic and nothing could be done with them. So I took this off Google Earth as well. This is a profile running through Lukapa in the east to Kafunfu in the Kwango Valley in the west. And this blue line, this very vague blue line here, is the thickness of the Kalahari and Kalonda. Now you can interpolate, maybe it's like this, perhaps there's a bit of high ground here all the way through. And we've seen from Herman's photographs that it looks a lot shallower over in the Kwango Valley. So perhaps there is a bit less, but the level of erosion is probably not that different to the kimberlites over here. So there still may be some disappointment with regard to that solid waste that you find and is typical of Katoka and some of the other kimberlites around Lukapa. Just a last word on Luele. This is what Rosa described it as, and it's this. Other people are talking about Luashi, probably just to help confusing. The Google Earth image shows the position of this pipe. I think Herman showed this also in one of his presentations, sitting here 20 or 30 kilometers southwest of Katoka, very, very convenient, not too far away. And Rosa says it's the largest diamond discovery of the past 60 years. And that must put it somewhere between Jwaneng and Arapa. And when you measure this circular feature down here, it just comes out to 60 hectares, more or less. And then they say the resource base is 350 million carats and give the average grade. So out of that, you can work out what the resource tonnage is. And when you do that using an SG of 2.5, I'm assuming they've got an indicated resource to 100 meters over 60 hectares, and initial and the sort of plant throughputs that we were hearing about yesterday would give, for stage 1 of the new production, an initial 3 to 4 million carats per annum. Sorry, I missed out the million. And over the long term, once it's all built up, 10 to 12 million carats per annum. So this is a significant discovery, and it's probably going to be in the range, I hope, I would assume, of $100 a carat if it's anything like Katoka. So on to the final slide at last. My prejudiced opinion of the medium-term potential. Kasai's got the best short to medium-term potential. It's as close to virgin craton as you're going to get anywhere because of the very little work that's been done over the last 20, 30 years for political and legal reasons. I would still put Yakutia second. Alrosa is very good at what they do, and they keep turning up new things, and it's highly prospective territory. You have to ask the question, the fact that the Kalahari has got so many more diamonds in Yakutia and Kasai, is that maybe because they just haven't found everything yet, or what? These are areas that are less exposed in the Kalahari craton, which is why I placed them relatively high in the process. The Slave and Superior and East European platform, I think moderate potential, I would put that. There are guys in Canada doing good work on the Slave and Superior, so let's see what they turn up. It's not impossible that something new can turn up. Breaking down the Kalahari, I've already described that. And I think in South Africa, alluvials and old prospects are really the name of the game going forward. In Northern Australia, still has low potential. It's going to be a lot of hard work there if people are prepared to get involved. But maybe, if Merlin comes back into production, depending on the diamond price they get, maybe that will trigger a new phase of exploration there. Thank you very much, and sorry for running over my time.
Thanks, Bill. Drinks are on you, so you better pass them around. That was excellent. Thanks, Bill.
That was the pre-seed version.
Okay, fantastic. I don't know if I heard, I said, drinks on you, so pass it around. Okay, catch your breath or have a drink, and let's open it up to questions. There's a lot of fascinating stuff there. Right, who wants to kick off?
I'll kick off with one or two questions.
Great.
Bill, you haven't said anything about Brazil. So
yeah, I meant to say apologies for that, but yeah, I mean, Brazil. The thing about Brazil is it was never difficult to find kimberlites. It was just. Do you want
to download? Sorry to cut in. Just download your or stop sharing, and then we can see people. Okay. No, sorry. Thanks.
Sorry, I forgot about that. No, just shared again. It was never difficult to find kimberlites in Brazil, as you know. The problem was finding kimberlites with decent quantities of diamonds. And certainly in the early days when De Beers was working there, they were looking for orapas and juanengs and those sorts of things. So, if the initial sampling didn't pass the muster, then they would move on to something new. I think the work that Ken and Paolo and the team are doing over there is fantastic. It will be great if Brauna really, picks up the legs and gets going, and perhaps that will be the spur to further work in Brazil. But over the years, it was pretty disappointing in terms of the outputs.
Another question comes to mind. It might be a bit early to even discuss this, but with the war in the Ukraine and the sanctions against Russia, is there any indication as to how this might affect Alrosa operations and sales and marketing?
Well, I think there's lots of rumors around that. I don't have any specific information. I think that the Alrosa is taking the view at the moment that Angola, they're in minority. I'm not sure what the situation is with regard to the new deposit, but that's the case with regard to Katoka, so it should be business as normal. But it's a big problem for the industry, I would guess, if Alrosa is not able to put its production onto the market. And not just a problem for Alrosa. Does anyone else have any other information?
No, Bill, I mean, when you read all the, the goings on and the fact that so much of the stuff is small and goes to India and gets cut, and that kind of makes it exempt from, the embargo. But obviously the embargo is really about, sales, I think, directly into the US. But I think probably the next, as Paul said, it'll be the next half of the year that will really, show what the real output or the real challenges might be. And if I can kick off while we wait for other questions, I mean, so much of this bill also goes back to understanding, I guess, geomorphology, particularly obviously in this country and in the Kasai. And then, equally, I guess it's a similar thing, but somewhat different in terms of ages. And there's a lot of potential, I guess, in buried kimberlites, in covered kimberlites in Russia or the Siberian Kraton.
Yes, absolutely. It'll be slow and it'll take a long time, but Alrosa has got the reserves the next 20 to 30 years, so time is on their side, and they have a monopoly there, and they're finding things in other places, like in Angola. So that's going to make a big difference to them as well.
Bill, a question. You mentioned earlier that you saw the potential in South Africa in the alluvial field.
Yeah.
Are you specifically talking at the Middle Orange River, or are you looking more at the offshore version? What is the space for the small digger, the artisanal digger, or is it the professional digger that you see being the future of alluvial diamonds?
I think the if you can get the if the regulatory, there's it's interesting that the alluvials start around Ventersdorp, Lichtenberg, and move this way, and obviously coming out of Lesotho as well. There's virtually nothing in the northern side. I think I've deliberately left Namaqualand, Alex Score, and the West Coast because that's, I'm not, I don't have detailed knowledge of those areas. I obviously know something about them, but I was looking at the inland areas. For some time, I've believed, like has been reinforced this week, that there's a lot more, well, these last 2 weeks, there's a lot more alluvial potential, and that our understanding of how these things have developed and where they come from can be improved on. And I hadn't really looked at it until after I retired from Snowden, just looking at it again and reading, some of the work that's been done over the last 10 years or so, particularly. And I've obviously got my own, thoughts and prejudices in terms of, how I see the geomorphology of South Africa developing. But I think that's also, something for another day. But the key thing is, anywhere on the Vaal, Orange rivers, is worth looking at carefully. And it's obviously difficult, but, depending on what you can find and what you can get, it could be, medium scale operators, sort of things that Lyndon was describing, and it could be things smaller than that. I don't have recent experience of seeing the small operators in operation.
Thank you. Pat, I see you on the call. Do you have any thoughts about the development of the alluvial diamond fields with respect to SADPO?
Yeah, obviously, I hope you can hear me. I've been load shedded to death, but I could not follow Bill's presentation. I've just now 5 minutes ago been able to log in again. So, but obviously we are hopeful for the future that with the new information, as Bill describes it, that some more potential alluvial sites might be found. But through SADPO itself, I mean, we in the hands of the experts, and what we're trying to do is make it easy once it's discovered to be able to operate.
Yeah, I think, I would say it's more than potential. I think it's, they're there. It's just a case of finding them and identifying the best areas. I think, based on what we've been discussing the last couple of weeks, there are deposits there. It's just a question of identifying them.
Yeah, well, and I think you've hit it on the head. Sorry, Tanya. I mean, it all goes back to the regulatory environment and compliance in this case. And if we had an enabling environment, the work done by Pierre and John Ward and others in the Northwest have shown that those sort of interfluvial or interglacial river deposits are far more extensive than initially thought. and the Middle Orange River and that area has huge potential. The key thing is you want to be able to operate, rapidly and efficiently. So I fully agree. I mean, I'm obviously biased, having been in the business, that there's a lot of upside. It'll never be, hundreds and millions of carats, but it'll certainly be, quality carats. And the most important thing, and that's what we desperately need, is obviously creating jobs and reviving economies in those small towns.
I think, Bill, if I could make a comment, another factor, if you like, in terms of exploration is those deposits that have, not all cratons are equal, not all kimberlites are equal, not all diamonds are equal. And those kimberlites that contain exceptional diamonds are particularly difficult to, well, I would say impossible to identify before discovery, and very difficult to evaluate once those kimberlites have been discovered. So that is perhaps a future direction of diamond exploration, to revisit discoveries and test to see if they have those large diamonds.
Yeah, I agree, and I think also, if you think about Victor in Canada, and the diamond's got a different paragenesis, if I understood Herman correctly, and so can you find areas like that have got potential for a different type of paragenesis that hopefully would tend to be a lot better. You might hit a Victor, you might hit an Argyle, but if it's running at 10 carats a ton and it's an Argyle, it's still okay. But it'd be nice if it was a 10 carat per ton deposit and it was a Victor. The other thing I wanted to say, Argyle closing is going to have a huge impact. It will already change the profile of the industry in terms of the average dollar per carat of what's reported in the Kimberley process and lots of other things. And all of a sudden, whatever replaces it is going to be much higher quality production, which will be good for the industry overall, I believe.
If I may ask another question in terms of the alluvials and South Africa per se, it's a layman's question and probably has been touched on during the 2 weeks that's passed, but the question remains to me, if you go, we talk about the Middle Orange River and we talk about the Lower Orange River, but there's quite some distance between the two, and the current drainage system of the Orange River obviously might have changed, I don't know, but I do not understand that the diamonds tend to disappear from more or less Groblershoop and then reoccur more towards the Richtersveld. It's just a layman's question.
Yeah, I'm not qualified to answer that one, Gert, sorry.
Yeah, Gert, I mean, it's an important observation. And I think as Henny van Wyk showed around the corner from Prieska, there are other deposits in, for example, the section of the Orange River between Prieska and Uppington. Obviously not as extensive. And then there's scattered deposits through that area, sort of in what's at Namaqualand or central and eastern Namaqualand, like Hulpits, for example. But those deposits are very much more dispersed. And I think it goes back to geomorphology. It's what Bill and John and Mike DeWitt and others are saying. There are large parts of this country we still need to figure out more carefully the geomorphology and where those big rivers actually went, or where they moved, and where did they leave diamond deposits? We've all been spoilt by the Northwest Province and the Vaal and Orange River, but we need to probably go and look at some of those in between areas between say the Orange and the West Coast, our West Coast, the Namaqualand West Coast. But that again, we need some of these young students to get out there and go and work those, or go and have a look at those areas. But,
I see, John, there's a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's Jean or Jean.
Yeah, John Tamanis, yeah.
Why are the pipes in KZN not diamond bearing? I'm not sure if there are kimberlite pipes in KZN, but if there are, they would be off Kraton, which is why they wouldn't be diamond bearing. I've got a vague recollection of maybe a melnoite or something in KZN.
Yeah, the Ashawi melnoites. Remember that Tony?
That's it. Yeah.
And then again in East Griqualand, I think they're also sort of perhaps the odd kimberlite, but also going melnoitic stuff. I mean, the real reason, Bully, you've said it, is off Kraton.
Yeah.
And that line is very sharp, and it's also quite interesting. If you look at sort of the southeast part of our Kraton, in the southeast and Mpumalanga and parts of northern Natal, where you do get a bit of sort of cratonic basement. I mean, you didn't find diamonds or kimberlites until you sort of got to Dokawaya in Swaziland, and then obviously your Dahlstrom dikes that you showed.
Yeah, that's right, John. I mean, Dokawaya was found just before I came to South Africa, but you also remember, a lot of that area was, Zululand at that time, so it wasn't accessible until much later. Tony Robertson did a lot of work up in that area, but I'm not sure how far north he went. And I don't recall that we did too much apart from stream sampling in those areas on the Swaziland border.
Yeah. And then of course, there's the golf club anomalies, or the golf green anomalies.
The famous the Colenso golf course, and that's when the ladies they started claiming the diamonds in Ladysmith. I immediately thought that's what it is.
and it was concentrate from where? From Premier, I think.
From Cullinan, yeah. After the end of the Second World War, when they were restarting Cullinan, some bright spark on the mine decided to sell
concentrate tailings
waste rock from the mine and concentrate for road metal and for use on railway lines. And so you get these fantastic anomalies all over the Transvaal and all the way down to Natal on the road to Mozambique as well, and also all the way up to Polokwane. In fact, I've got a picture of a road south, but at Rayton, with a lump of kimberlite in it, with the tar road.
It was like the diamonds. It was a Steve Haggerty found diamonds in an old structure somewhere around. Was it the Big Hole or one of the Kimberley mines many years ago? Looking around some of those old dumps in an old remnant building, I think there was a diamond sticking out of the wall. Okay. And Mike, just going back to your comment about those very low-grade kimberlites with exceptional diamonds. I mean, I think the next target, and I think he might be quietly doing a bit of work on it already, is how do you develop pathfinder methods or indicator minerals that are going to delineate or take you to those big exceptional diamonds and very low grade kimberlites. I'm sure Andy Moore is also pondering over it. One of the questions I've had come up from some students, not necessarily on this course, and I've sort of had it in my own career, is the fact that, you know, geology is not an exact science, and it means that you sort of can do lots of things. And certainly, and Herman, maybe it's time for you to come in here. We talked about it the other day, the fact that, you know, diamond geologists end up with a huge number of skills. I mean, as we've seen in this course, you can go everywhere from geophysics to mineral chemistry to you know, diamond studies. And so, you know, very often I think today young students look at, you know, what futures there in geology and what futures there in diamonds. Here we're saying, well, we don't think there are necessarily lots of new discoveries that are going to come up, but I don't think students should be put off by that. Maybe you, Paul, want to comment. You've been in the game a long time, and equally Herman.
Yeah, I mean, in diamond exploration, you never know what's going to happen the next day, type of thing, you know, because I mean, when I joined De Beers in late 1974, I was told that I would be going to work with Alex Van Zyl for the next 3 to 6 months to help him close the Transvaal operation as it then was. Then I spent 11 years in the field, going from one kimberlite discovery to the next. It was incredible.
And you're still in the Transvaal.
And I'm still in the Transvaal.
Yeah. No, it's an incredibly broad field. Herman, do you want to come in there as well?
Yeah, look, yeah, I'll provide comment there, but the host has disabled my video. So if somebody can just enable my video again, then I can share my face as well. Oh, there we go.
It probably happened when my screen was unshared.
So there's my face, but I also want to share my screen quickly.
It's been a long 2 weeks.
If you guys can see a piece of core there, this is the kind of thing that makes your hair stand on end. This is a drill core from an Angolan kimberlite. There's a mantle xenolith sitting in the middle there. It's NQ diameter core, so it's quite a small little mantle xenolith. There's a coating of kimberlite magma sitting outside the mantle xenolith. This is what's called a lapillus. It's all extremely well preserved by a carbonate cement infilling over here. And these red pieces are pieces of Karoo siltstone. It's called the Kassange in Angola. But inside this piece of Karoo siltstone, that's a trace fossil. This is a worm burrow that was in the sediment, in the Karoo sediment, as the Karoo sediment was being deposited, and that worm was escaping the sedimentation that was going on, and it's left this trace fossil in here. This particular picture sort of encapsulates why I've been in diamonds all this time. It's the only version of geology where you can think about the mantle, think about magmatism, and at the same time think about sediments and things that are going on in, you know, the upper crust, the upper crustal regime. And it's such a broad scale of thinking of geological processes, and the way we get trained as diamond geologists allows us to examine all of these questions all at once. So it's such an interdisciplinary study that I found in my career I'm able to translate into all sorts of other aspects of earth science simply because I've had this training in the diamond world of being able to think broadly and laterally and on a conceptual level, and then at a very, very detailed scientific level as well. So it's an extremely exciting field to want to get involved in. And the skills that you build up in the diamond industry are eminently transferable. People who do well in the diamond industry do well everywhere else as well. And I've seen that through my career. There are people who have worked with me in the diamond resource delineation and diamond exploration that then subsequently go on to other kinds of engagement with the industry, and they all do well. It's amazing how well trained the cohort of people are that are in the diamond industry, and how unique the industry is from that perspective.
Yeah, fantastic and fascinating.
Yeah.
And a piece of rock out of the middle of Angola says it all.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, we also have dinosaur bones out of the crater facies material from, I think it's this exact same kimberlite.
Amazing. And well preserved, Herman.
Yeah, look, this once you get down beyond the laterite horizons, it's it's as well preserved as kimberlites are on the cobalt plateau.
Yeah, and I mean those Kalondo and the Kalahari Basin. I mean, if ever rocks were, or if ever those sequences were looking for an intensive, wide scale geomorphological and sedimentological study, I mean, they're classic examples.
But the reality is this: I started my career with De Beers on the 2nd of February 1987. I learned all the basics that I needed to know to understand this rock in Angola from doing work in Kimberley, in the Kimberley mines, and in the petrographic unit that we were trained as junior geologists. It was all there, and it's an education that's invaluable, in particular in today's environment. And as I said, the skill set is very transferable.
Yeah, and I think the one thing about it, it takes you, and you've mentioned that you go from intense detail through to having to put together the macro picture.
Yeah,
and work with mining engineers and so on.